This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. So we had quarterbacks, cornerbacks, running backs, pass rushers, trades, top 10s, QBs who won't make it in the NFL, at least 9/10 of them. High motor, low work rate, diva attitude, bad Wonderlic scores. Where the hell does that word ever come from? Hand size, and booing Jets fans. It's a tradition. Just watch YouTube and watch that. Wonderful montage. These are things that will all be gone after Saturday, mostly tonight, actually. But for tonight, it's all we talk about. So welcome, everybody, to the On the Sports Lines Draft Night Special 2022. So with me, as always, is Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait. And joining us close to the center of the football universe in the fact that California is close to Las Vegas. You are in California, right?
I am.
Okay.
I am exactly 3.5 hours from Las Vegas.
Okay, so that's pretty close enough. We'll take it. It's Joe Tufaro of many media ventures. Joe, welcome to our Draft Madness tonight.
Always happy to be here every year. I'm glad we were able to work out the logistics again. Sometimes I'm in New York, sometimes I'm in California, sometimes I'm in Chicago, but this time we were able to work it out. So I'm glad to be here.
Always glad to have you aboard, my friend.
Yeah, great to have you back on the show. And Baba, I think you should with that open, I think you should describe my 3.5 years at House University. I mean, that's pretty much what it is.
Work rate? Low work rate and bad Wonderlic scores?
You knew me at WRSU.
I knew you enough, but you were much better than that. Okay. So before we start getting to the Jags pick at number 1, and there's so much hype for it, it might be 10 to 15 minutes. With all the encompassing hype that surrounds this weekend for the NFL, I'm going to ask you one simple question. Is this crap actually worth it? I'm going to start with Joe, who will make his point by starting with with a look back at the past.
Yeah, I think what's happened over the years with this is it's become such a media thing. It's become such a sports catcher thing. Everyone has to have a mock draft. Everybody has to have the smart guys just put up the top 10 players and then they put up the top 100 players so they don't actually have to get them in order. But I think there's such hype around certain players in certain schools that those players really get built up to a point where they oversee their value before they even get picked. And I think with all these NIL deals and everything else, it's going to become even worse because the guys who know how to self-promote and then the other guys who are going to write about it, the Schechters and all these guys that fall in love with these guys because they interview them or they only watch a few games a year, that's what's going to happen. You're going to continue to push these guys that are actually higher than the value is. So if you go back and again, we decided to go 4 years back because Jay and I always say the famous, you can't grade a draft until 4 years later. And you look at Baker Mayfield, you look at the Jets moving up to get Sam Darnold. You look at Josh Rosen, you look at guys that were pushed and pushed and pushed by the media, and you had to get a quarterback, and the first 3 guys, or the first 4 guys had to be 3 quarterbacks. None of them are with their original teams at this point. So it's just that I think it's getting to the point where outside the war rooms, it's becoming a little bit of a joke because it's more about popularity. It's more about what guys talk about. It's about one guy's pro day. I don't know why you have the combine without helmets on. Why don't you have the combine with helmets and shoulder pads on? You got a guy running a route. Why not have him see if he can catch the ball with a helmet on? It's a simple little thing, but they want to make it more and more popular for normal people to watch. And I just think it devalues what actually goes on in the war room of how teams put these guys in what order they put them in. And then you get owners like the guy in Washington, like the guy in North Carolina, who said, I get too involved. I'm impatient. So let's go get this guy. Let's go get that guy. And they're not looking at their boards and their value numbers. So I think it's gotten away from what it was supposed to be before it was on television. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and Rabbi, I'm gonna play off what Joe just said because I mean he and I are aligned on this. And here's the thing: I mean, you guys have heard me. There's a couple of common thread rants that I have every year about. I agree with you, Joe, 100% about the combine. I've never been a fan of the combine. I understand to me, if you got rid of all of the physical tests and all it was. I think the personnel guys, the assistant coaches, whoever goes down there for the respective organizations, I think they get more out of this once you get past height, weight, hands, and I'm not a fan of the whole hand size thing, as you guys know. We'll talk about
I don't think anyone's a fan of the hand size
right,
thing,
but it's
Jay.
become a thing, and which also annoys me is that I think these guys, you learn more about these players in the interviews when you're getting to know them and trying to get some insight into their character, their attitude, their work ethic, where they're coming from, what they're looking to get out of it, and what they're looking to put into it, and you get to a point where, like, I constantly, rail against people who constantly throw out numbers and times from combines and so I'm like, you've spent an entire year watching football, either live or on tape. Why are you trying to talk yourself out of drafting a guy because of a certain measurement or a certain time is off by a tenth of a second? I think the combine devalues it. I think these pro days are a joke. They're all they are is a chance. That's a PR advertising stunt. It's basically a billboard up on a highway. You're putting the guy in his best position. It's not indicative. Nothing that I think you will see in a pro day actual translates to a field. He's not throwing against pass rush. He's not throwing as the receivers aren't running into coverage. You're not seeing how a running back bounces through holes and makes decisions on which way he's going to go based on the defensive line. You're not going to see how you don't see offensive tackles lining up against pass rushers and vice versa. So what's the point of a pro day? The combine to me is the same thing. Look, the draft is the draft, and I know the NFL has to make it into good television, but at the point where I think there's getting to be a point where the entertainment value is detracting from the football value.
I think it always
funny. They just real quick. They talked to Joe Shane about going to a pro day, and he said it's not so much watching the guy throw; it's how he interacts with people. He said, does he look at the trainer and say water, or does he say, "Excuse me, can I get some water, or can I get a towel," or does he boss people around? He goes, we're looking for interactions. How does he treat other people? How does he treat his teammates? How does he act? And those are the type of things that, again, they're not showing on TV. They're showing all the other stuff, like you said. It's just a glorified practice. And
right.
But these are the things that the real guys are looking for.
Yeah.
And the reason guys move up or down the draft board is based on those interviews.
Anthony, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say this. I have a story too. About the scouting combine. I remember Marcus Colston, and obviously me and Rabbi went to school with him. He had one of the worst scouting combines I have ever seen. He dropped passes. He ran a 40 that was pretty slow. He actually was one of the agility drill. He slipped. It was really bad. And they was talking about how he has to be a tight end because he had the speedy wide receiver. Gets to the NFL, and he was a great wide receiver for the Saints. He's in the Saints Hall of Fame. Helped them win a Super Bowl. Had a great 9-10-year career in the National Football League. So I think the scouting combine is like a glorified gym class. If you want to look at guys just work out in shorts and do these drills, and it's like, well, you have a whole college football season of tape to see what they do in a live game. So why not come in and let them talk, interact, and feel their personalities? Get away with get away from like the one tests and all this other crap. It's like, can he show up on Sundays? Can I depend on him? Has a professional on and off the field, and is he going to help my team win football games? Which is what it comes down to. The draft itself, I think for us fans, like it's the NFL has done a good job of making it into an event within itself. Because to the fans, it feels like the official start of a new NFL season. Because you think about it, we just get off the Super Bowl. We've had the free agency. We've had obviously franchise tagging players. Now we get to see kind of like turn the page to the 2022 NFL season as far as dealing with mini workouts, the draft, bringing the
voluntary off-season workouts. Remember that?
So we see like that. For us, it's the entertainment, it's the shock value. It's great to see these young men obviously get to live their dreams, obviously on TV. And I'm old enough to remember where this used to be in a hotel in Midtown Manhattan and broadcast on Saturday afternoons. And now it's become such
It
a
was that
major
way until
event.
2014, by the way.
Yeah,
It's not
I mean, it's become
that
a major
long
event.
ago that we were in this whole New York, although they were on Thursday. But I think the one thing that's very interesting about this whole scenario is there's just, I'm going to defend it for this reason and this reason only. There are all of these schools, there are all of these places that people can see. You don't know what a Malik Willis is ever going to be like unless you have a combine. You don't know what any of the Sun Belt teams is ever going to be like. You don't know if a person from FCS is ever going to make it into the National Football League. And yes, you're right. It's a glorified gym exercise. We understand that. But unfortunately, it's hard being a person who can compare one quarterback to another quarterback, one lineman to another lineman, one running back to another running back. This is the toughest thing. And I think the combine and I think all of this, and by the way, yes, the NFL, if they do one thing very well, it's make everything a ridiculous spectacle. I don't even consider this anywhere near the start of a new season. That new season comes in June and July.
Yeah,
What
by
I'm
the way,
seeing right now is it escapes.
I just saw the advertisement for the schedule release on May 14th. Okay, so the NFL makes everything
May
into a
12th, by the
big
way,
event
get
in
it
itself.
right.
May 12th.
I'm very excited.
May 12th,
May
yes.
12th.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, Rabbi has long said, and it's become more and more self-evident over the years, football is king and the NFL is king of football. And when you have your own network, when you kind of have to, you need to put content out there, right? You need to fill a certain number of hours of programming, and you can only re-show so many old Super Bowls and whatnot. So you have to make certain things, certain milestone events on the NFL calendar become entertainment events. Does it get a little ridiculous? Yeah. I was reading an article written by Richard Deitz, who's the media correspondent for The Athletic. He used to do the same thing for ESPN, widely respected guy. I've read him for years. And he was talking
which is why ESPN got rid of him, because he's a widely respected guy. So.
Well, there you go. He was talking to the two producers who are basically the guys in charge of the broadcast tonight for ESPN, ABC, and for the NFL Network. And they both said that it doesn't matter if there's a lot of sexy picks or not. They say people will tune in for their particular team. They're going to tune in also, to see if there's any trades or anything. But also, these guys, both of them, court chaos. They don't want a draft that's going to go chalk like, Dane Brugler's, mock or Daniel Jeremiah's mock or anyone, or even Kuiper or McShay's. Not that I ever have stopped putting stock in those guys' mocks, but at the same time, they want chaos. They want to see trades. They want to see reaches, because why? It makes for more entertaining television.
They want to see Jet fans.
The draft is.
They want to see Jet fans, and we've seen how Jet fans have reacted to bad picks over the years.
Anthony's right, and this is why I miss the draft
video
in Radio City. It's not, look, I understand why the NFL took the draft on the road and wants to put it in different cities every year. But there was just something about it. And maybe it's being a native New Yorker. There was something about the draft being in Radio City, because you knew every year, no matter who the Jets took, they were going to boo.
I was there in 2014, so I saw it firsthand for myself.
Yeah, he was that's the last one that's actually big here. But I do think that that's one thing the NFL wanted to do, and it's a good thing to do, especially because of how non-successful the New York teams have been in this, to kind of bring the draft everywhere else.
Rabbi,
and that's something I think it's really smart. That's something I think it's really smart of them to do, because it's such an event. You can get everybody to come to you. You can get people to willingly come to Cleveland. And I didn't know that was actually possible, but that's happened last year. So I'm sure people are very excited.
Oh, yeah. And these guys also said that the fact that both New York teams have a pair of picks in the top 10 also makes for good television and entertainment. But here's what's interesting to me. As much as, everybody's going to, go nuts with whoever gets drafted 1 or 2, and the trades and all that. The thing that I'm looking for is I want to see which team, if it's somebody, especially if it's in the top 10 or 15, reaches to get one of these quarterbacks. Okay. I want to see who overdrafts someone, and then I want to see how they justify it. I want to see the buzzwords that get used. I'm not so much concerned about, the analysis after the pick, because we're going to do the same thing here. And we all know pretty much how it's going to be. We know what we're going to see and what we're going to say. It'll be interesting to see which quarterback gets taken first and how high up or how low down it goes. Picks in, guys.
I think the pick is it. Okay, guys, let me actually announce the picks this year and not do it. So, as you noticed, the Jacksonville Jaguars are currently the team that's on the clock. Last year was not a good year for them, which is why they're making a second consecutive number 1 pick. This will not be a quarterback, which is the first time since 2017. That's 4 drafts that we will not have a quarterback. Before we see what the pick is, what's the logical pick, Jay, for this spot for Jacksonville?
Pass rusher. You already have the guy that's going to be the engine that gets your offense going. Now it's a passing league. So you need quarterbacks on offense who can get you down the field and wide receivers who can catch. On the other side, you need pass rushers. You need guys who can stop the opposing quarterback from getting, putting up chunk yardage and, putting your defense on its heels. So I think either I will be shocked if it's not a pass rusher. And we all know, we've kind of talked about it in production meetings and, on conversations. I have a feel it's got to be a pass rusher. The question here is just which one. Are they going to go safe? Are they going to take a risk? It'll be interesting to see what Trent Bach does here. And because this pick,
it's another number 1 pick. It's another number 1 pick that's going to be someone that's going to be a very huge part of the organization. They kind of sewed up the offensive line this week, as Jay, it sounds like you dropped out on our end. Yeah, but I'm very curious to see what they want to do. They have Doug Peterson in now, so the team is not as much of a distraction anymore. Not Urban Meyer.
This meeting is being recorded.
Yeah, I would think for me, they would definitely take a defensive player. They need kind of an anchor on that, and an anchor and a foundation on that side of the ball too. I think back to when they went to the AFC Championship game and how that defense was such a big part of the Jaguars' success then. They got Trevor Lawrence on the offensive side. They needed to do something about the defensive side also. Oh, by the way, the boy Tony Khan is in the war room. He just told him on TV.
Please let me say it beforehand. All right, so we're about to see the pick as Roger Goodell, as I have everything on mute, and it is exactly who a lot of people thought it was. It's Trayvon Walker, defensive end from Georgia.
This week.
It's a move that a lot of people thought was going to happen. It's interesting because there's a lot. Yes, he's from the national champion Georgia Bulldogs, but it's not the most star-studded resume. He did play more snaps than any other defensive lineman in Georgia. He played 56% of snaps, but we talked about it. It was that amazing gym workout, and with a 6'5", 275-pound frame, running a 4.6. They decided to bet on the tricks, and I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think there is an elite player in this draft. I think the best resume and talent is Aiden Hutchinson, but I think Walker has kind of got the name. He was a freshman All-SEC team in his first year, had 15 tackles, 3.5 for loss, 2.5 sacks, and he had 37 stops, 7.5 for loss, 6 starts, 2 pass breakups last year. You can't go wrong with either of these top 2 picks. He is still going to be a little bit, he's a raw pass rusher. So he's going to need to be a lot more strategic. He's going to have to be part of a system. He has mediocre career sack production in Georgia. And you're in a system where you're going to have to eventually be a star. So the Vernon Golston production is definitely a possibility, which is a big problem. But guys, can't go too wrong with the guy who has the athletic ability that he does. He zoomed up a lot of people forwards over the last few weeks. And I want to go to Anthony for this very quickly. Do you think this is the type of guy you would want on your team rather than a guy like Hutchinson?
Well, the thing is about Walker's, like I said, between Walker and Henderson, you don't really go wrong with either one. In the case of Walker, he played a lot of coverage too, so I think that's a bit of a notch on his belt as well. I mean, he can drop back into coverage, he can line up in a good 3-4 scheme, and he does have a high motor. The sack thing, I think might be a little exaggerated because I think that's something that'll come along. He's a raw talent, and that is a raw talent. And if you're gonna build him up as kind of being the anchor and the foundation of a defense that's gonna be young and maybe in another year or so being a top 10, top 15 as far as defensive production, I think it's a good pick. I don't expect him to go out and be to be Aaron Donald right out of the gate. I think that's being a little too much, but for a guy who still has a ways to go but has a lot of promise, I think it's a good pick for a Jacksonville team that just top to bottom is building up as far as the organization is concerned. They have the whole mess with the whole Urban Meyer situation and everything. This is kind of like the beginning of a real clean slate as far as trying to get the organization back in the right direction.
Yeah,
we're about to see that second pick coming up, by the way, in a second, guys. So let's keep talking here. I think I know what it's going to be. But
yeah. So
Jay, I think you can take the lead on this one.
Yeah, I am. Rabbi and I had a handshake deal once we figured out that it was likely that Walker was going to go 1. I can't see Hutchinson dropping past his local team, and there it is, guys. He's there.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's a no-brainer pick. I mean, this is a guy runner. I mean, Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, runner-up in the Heisman. The first time a defensive player has come this close since Charles Woodson, another Michigan guy, also won it. What's going to be, and honestly, this is actually a good fit of player and scheme, and that's the thing is that he primarily played as a down lineman, hand in the turf, going downhill, and that's the type of scheme that Detroit runs. So and this is a guy. Here's the good thing though, is that people look at it based on the numbers he put up, 14 sacks last year coming from the edge, but he started his career as an interior lineman in former DC Don Brown scheme. And then when Mike McDonald came on board, he moved him outside to a stand-up edge rusher. So he's played hand down, he's played stand up. So I think, you're looking at a guy who's pretty versatile. There could be some issues with his leverage to constantly win that battle because he is 6'7", but I think he can handle the run. This is a guy who has everybody talks about his motor, but he's more than just a guy with a motor. So, and that's the thing that I think, guys, Detroit's going to be getting. The big comparison in the NFL is Raiders DE Max Crosby. Arm length and athleticism as opposed to Hutchinson's. Neither of those traits on Hutchinson are considered to be elite level, but good enough. Crosby plays as a hand down end and he wreaks havoc on twist stunts. He creates opportunities by attacking tackles instead of working, to a landmark. Hutchinson is kind of similar in that type of play. And I think that, coming in the league, that sets him up for a high floor. Is he going to be the next TJ Watt where you think he's got the potential to, put up a 22 sack season? No, but I mean, this is a guy who's going to, steady 10, 12 sacks every year. He's going to defend against the run, and I think what you're looking for is a guy. He's not a sexy pick. He's probably about as safest pick as you can get here, guys. And that's kind of what you're looking for. And I think he'll be fine whether he's a down end in a 4-3 scheme or he's a stand-up outside linebacker, but he's going to be more of a rush guy. He's not going to be asked to drop into coverage. So even if he winds up, playing in a scheme where he is standing up, it's going to be like TJ Watt over in Pittsburgh. So I like the pick. I think he's going to be starting from day one. His ceiling might not be, at the Watt level, but you know what? His floor is going to come in with a really high floor. And I think he's going to give, he's a building block for that defense. And like I said, it's a nice marriage of player and style with team and scheme.
You just said it perfectly. I want to get Joe in on this a little bit, talking about what the Lions organization can get getting a homegrown player. They did a couple of things correct last year, even with Goff at center.
Yeah, no, and it makes sense because again, since you're starting from scratch from a couple of years ago, you're all looking to sell tickets too, and to bring in a guy that played at Michigan and Michigan finally had their big year where they beat Ohio State, they beat Michigan State. There's a little bit of something there. There's a little bit of oomph there. Everybody knows who he is. Everybody got to watch him. He had some success, so I think it's great. I think it fits right in. Again, I think Jay's right. I don't think he's got the ceiling that some of the other guys do, but he will get better from where he was, and he played very well, and he can be a little bit more versatile. So I think it's a very good idea to pick him.
And
Yeah,
Anthony, what's your opinion on this pick before we move on to your pick?
First of all, Coach Dan Campbell's gonna love this guy. If you ever see Dan Campbell's press conference or just see Dan Campbell how he just operates in a nutshell, he's a versatile guy who can thrive in a 4-3 and a 3-4. He's just as he will remind me of a TJ Watt, a guy who can rush off the edge, whether he's standing or in the 3/4 or in 3/4 stance. But I think it was something I appreciate is the fact that he can't stop the run. He is a really good run stopper with his athleticism. He has an incredible high ceiling. Is he like on the level of the Bolsas? No, but you said with Crosby, that's a great comparison. That his agility, his arm length, everything kind of falls in that range. I can see him as a guy who can get you 9, 10, maybe 11 sacks each season and have that occasional breakout year where you see him in the NFL top 100 player discussion and being able to make that game-changing play. So I think, and also the fact that he is a local, he's from Michigan native. The Lions, I think it's a great pick for the Lions. This is a way you want to sell, like as Joe said, you want to sell tickets. And you get a Michigan product coming off a year when Michigan by far had the best season in a long time. They were part of the college football playoff. They won the Big Ten championship. So there's a lot of momentum building for this pick. And I think it's a slam dunk for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Jeremiah of NFL.com, I mean, when his scouting report kind of said it best. He's not in the same class as the Bosa brothers, but he's not far behind. Rabbi, I believe, is the big in.
Yep, so let's talk right now. I have no gosh darn idea what the Houston Texans are ever doing. They finally traded Deshaun Watson,
coming,
cutting salary, and they seem to be cutting salary, not really rebuilding at the same time. And they went quarterback with pick number 3 as they picked Derek Stingley Jr., quarterback LSU. I love my Tigers.
I heard this yesterday.
There's a lot of people that thought that Gardner was a better prospect coming out of this draft. A lot of people had Gardner going off the boards. We'll talk about Sauce Gardner most likely in the next few minutes. But Anthony, Stingley, this is a very interesting choice here.
You know what it is, and I had the Texans pick because I had them going with Thibodeau at number 3. I thought they would go with an edge rusher. They really haven't had one since they drafted Jadeveon Clowney all those years ago. I thought that would have been the direction they would have gone. But I mean, look, Derek Stingley Jr. Has an incredible high ceiling. He's been ranked among a lot of prognosticators has been the best corner in this draft. But the last 2 years is really not. Like I said, I don't think it's a great measurement of what kind of player he can be because of the mess that went on in LSU since that national championship year in 2019. It's interesting because I really thought the Texans would go with either a lineman or even one of the edge rushers. Yeah, so with the Jets being on the clock, and I actually had them taking a corner at number 4, just not Stingley Jr. Like I said, I'm kind of stunned. I'm kind of surprised. This is why the NFL made this into a made-for-TV event for reactions like the one I'm giving right now. Because
he actually received a scholarship, by the way, from Les Miles. So we're going actually even farther back, and he was the number 1 cornerback in that 2019 recruiting class at number 3 nationally. So it shows, and a person that we'll definitely see in this draft, Kayvon Thibodeau, was number 2. But by the way, great sized athlete, can easily close the gap. He has, again, the body of what you want in the position And yes, he's going to need to start on the field. He's missed more games in the last 2 years for LSU than he's played. He's been a little bit of a victim of the
Yeah, he had
pandemic,
the foot injury, I think. If I remember correctly.
remember-
Let's break ligament in
yes,
October.
but also
23.
remember, Jamar Chase had the same exact issues last year, not being on the field as much, and that did not hurt him in any one bit. LSU has produced so much talent from that national championship team in 2019-20 that you really can't go wrong with this pick. But there's a lot of people who had Sauce Gardner and a few people, I'm not one of them, that had Trent McDuffie even higher as a prospect than Derek Stingley Jr. But one thing I can say about this draft is you can't go really too wrong with any of these top 10 picks in the vacuum because it's going to be pretty much alphabet soup from this point forward.
Yeah, I like that the Texans was. I looked at it like this: like the Texans, one of the options they could have gone was lineman because you just signed Laramie Tunsil to an extension. I thought they would have gone that direction, maybe get a bookend as far as pass protection. But going with Stingley Jr. We'll see how that works out for the Texans moving forward.
Yeah, what's interesting?
I actually heard this pick.
Sorry, Joe.
No, I actually heard this pick yesterday that this is exactly how this would go, and that they had decided that Houston had decided to take him at 3. And I was, you're skeptical about all these guys that put out what they've heard and what they've done, but it's funny. I've heard these 3 names yesterday from somebody, and that's exactly how they went. So, and it's interesting because now you go, do the Jets take Thibodeau, and then the Giants have their choice of all offensive linemen in the draft. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I said this to Rabbi, earlier today when we were talking that how this draft, the path that the first round, or at least the top 10 is going to take, would be determined by how the Texans played the third pick. So, this is a surprise. No mock drafts other than maybe later, late today. For the most part, no one had Stingley going this high.
I'm sure one of the 29 mock drafts I had was going high.
Maybe.
I'm sure it's possible.
I had Stingley as the second cornerback coming off the board, and I had him going to the Jets at 10. So now it's going to be interesting to see. It very much opens the field up, for the Giants to do kind of what, Joe and I think we're aligned on this: offensive lineman at 5 and potentially going cornerback at 7 with Sauce Gardner. So,
but now you could, if you're going to say that the Jets aren't going to take Sauce, you could almost wait. You could now switch and take the offensive lineman at 7 because they're all going to be on the board.
That's true.
If you got Neal and you got Wangu and you have the other guys, you got four guys and 2 picks. You're not going to lose them, and Carolina's probably going to drop out. And so
Carolina's either going to drop out and something's going to go up to them or something else. Look, there are Jets fans, by the way. They are ready to boo whatever pick is possible. Again, like I said, unless this is the knowest no name of all, you really can't go wrong with this pick. And we'll get to it in a few minutes because we're all going to.
Jets, they're definitely going to. I'm interested to see. I mean, they got Jet fans on the screen here. I'm watching the draft on NFL Network. It's a question of when the pick is in and after Goodell finishes, I want to see if the camera moves back to the Jets section and see if those fans are clapping or if they're booing.
I tell you, the only way they go
Mike
wrong.
Greenberg is hosting, they're definitely going to boo on the ESPN side. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Rabbi, the
only
way they go wrong. The only way they go completely wrong on this pick is if it's an offensive player.
Well, can it be an it's an offensive lineman. That technically is an offensive player.
Count. That doesn't count.
That doesn't count for you. All right, guys, let's talk about it in a second. It looks like the Jets are going to pick. Hold on.
I called the position
exactly
right.
Exactly what we thought it was. Exactly what we thought it was. They go with Sauce Gardner, quarterback, Cincinnati. Who wants?
I picked him at number 4.
It's
funny. Sauce, baby.
And I got to tell you, and honestly, I know that there's a lot of there's Stingley and Gardner are the 2 names that are constantly have been thrown around when they talk about this. But I mean, I think there's a reason Gardner is the number 1 ranked cornerback, in the draft, listings. I think this is a guy who he's got he's got above average ball production. He had 9 career interceptions, a pair of pick sixes. He used to play wide receiver in high school, so he makes catch point adjustments like the former receiver he used to be. He knows how to use the sideline to cut off routes. Sauce has got some sauce. He doesn't apologize, for being exuberant. That's
you're going to see that you see the chain that he's wearing tonight. No, he does not.
A1, baby.
Well, but here's the thing, though.
Yes.
We talk about we talked about it during the year, when we were talking college football and coming into the CFP, about just how good Cincinnati's defense was. And he was a huge part of that. If you think about it, quarterbacks just stopped throwing to his side of the field last year. He only had 2.9 targets per game last season, did not give up a 20-plus yard reception. So this is a guy who was fully comfortable being left on an island. And he definitely has the skill set to play in the, at top level and be a number 1 cornerback in the NFL. He was a boundary guy in Mike Tressel's man-heavy scheme, so he knows how to play on an island. So I think he's going to. I think that translates. He's going to have to get used to the changing, the different types of route trees that get run. But I mean, this is a guy who only saw 11% of the defensive targets last year. He's allowed 0 touchdown passes on 1,103 career coverage snaps. I'm not talking about when they've been in zone. Coverage snaps. Sticky bump and run corner, great athletic instincts. I think this guy is going to be exactly the comparison with him is Antonio Cromartie when he's coming out of Florida State.
Mr. Sherman, it's another guy.
That's what this guy turns into. Cromartie was a 4-time Pro Bowler. I think the Jets will take that.
Hey, look, when you think of the kind of defense that Robert Saleh wants to play, and being and allowing defensive backs to be on an island and play man to man, and you have a guy with the sauce, literally, who is confident that he can shut down a corner. I mean, a receiver at any time. I mean, you'll take that in a heartbeat. And Saleh wants to play more of an aggressive defense, but the Jets defense is so bad. I mean, there was literally a stretch when they gave up 130 points in 3 games last November. They were just terrible on the defensive backfield. And you get a guy in Gardner who has the ability to take away half a field as far as being a lockdown corner. The Jets really haven't had that in a long time, and that's pretty much what they needed a playmaker in the defensive backfield in a worse way. They got someone who he only just allowed 6 yards per reception in last season, 2021. Obviously, the 9 career interceptions. You know what? He did a good job against Jameson Williams in the semifinal, but we saw that game. Alabama just ran down their throats. They didn't even try to throw the ball downfield. So I don't want to really give him too much credit for that. But everything else on tape, just as far as his length, his confidence, I think the Jets
his confidence is the big thing. I think.
Yeah, I think the Jets desperately needed this. They need a cultural change without question, and a guy who's going to walk into Forum Park, New Jersey, at least confident and knowing he get the job done. I think that really goes a long way as it reverberates towards the rest of the locker room, especially a young guy, no less. But it's going to, like I said, as far as the system that Saleh wants to play defensively, he's a great fit because you don't have too many man-to-man corners who can take away half the field these days. It's almost becoming extinct nowadays because you see a lot of teams play more zone coverage, more man zone and cover 2. So to take away literally an option for a quarterback and to make them have to only play with 2/3 of a field, defensively, if you can do that, you're going to win a lot of football games.
What's interesting,
Joe,
what's interesting
Joe,
to me about is that Saleh's not known for being big on cornerbacks. He's more about the front 4 and getting pass pressure. So it's interesting to me that with that, knowing that that's the type of scheme he really wants to run, that's not really dependent on having elite cornerbacks in coverage. It's interesting that with the first of their 2 first-round picks, that they went cornerback. That's what's interesting to me.
And Joe, I'm wondering what this means for the Giants prospects. That pick is about to be in. Did you think that they could have possibly went for one of the 2 cornerbacks, or did you think they had this focus set up?
No, it's funny. Joe Shane said it the other day. Somebody said, "Oh, would you go cornerback at 5?" And he looked at the guy. He said, "You think there's going to be a cornerback left at number 5?" So I think
he was right.
I think he was right. I think they knew both of them were going to be gone. I don't think he thought it was where they were going, that they were going 3 and 4, but
Right.
he didn't believe that they were going to be there. And I do think this opens it up to, if you want to take Thibodeau, you can take him now and still get the offensive lineman you want at 7, or you can take the offensive lineman. You can take 2 offensive linemen now. You can take 5 and 7.
Which is what I think they should
there.
do, honestly, because you could get the 2 best offensive linemen in this draft, or the 2 best offensive
Right.
linemen that you think are the best in this draft. But we're about to find out who that pick is. As I'm just going to continue talking until that happens. I do think that could be the pick. I would like to see them pick Neal from Alabama, because I think he has the best resume out of this full draft, Joe.
Somebody said the other day that I thought this was very interesting. Said, when you pick somebody from a professional program, as we always call Alabama, they're like playing for an NFL team. Have you?
They definitely are.
Yeah. So have you already reached your ceiling playing for Alabama? So that's what he's going to be. He's not going to get any better than that. So
okay, so they went with Tavon. They went with Trayvon Thibodeau of Oregon with that pick.
Yeah.
So Joe, I know you were talking about them possibly picking him at number 5 first. What's your opinions on this? The fluctuations have changed of him throughout the weeks, and there were reports he did not have a good interview with the Giants, but that was a smokescreen apparently.
Well, I don't put much into reports of how interviews went or anything, because nobody knows unless you're sitting in that room. We've talked about this for years, that you don't really know what actually happened. You don't know who's reporting what. Don't forget, they were trading Kadarius Toney last week, and that didn't happen either, because somebody made that up out of thin air because he didn't go to a voluntary workout. So I don't believe any of this stuff. I think that the guy is. I think they're looking for a Micah Parsons type player, in that he can. And again, I don't like that they've devalued this position to call it edge rusher. You guys know I hate this new term. He's an outside linebacker. He's going to have to cover guys. He's going to have to stop the run. He's going to have to set the edge. He's going to have to rush the passer. I think he's the 3rd best pass rusher in the group. I think those other 2 guys are better at just pure that. But he's very good tackles for loss. He had some really good games in Oregon. He's very, very confident. He's one of those guys that has said, I'm going to be a success. They obviously like a lot of things about him to have picked him here. I think it felt perfectly for them that they could get him. And now you're still going to have, I think you might still have every offensive lineman available, because I still think Carolina's getting out of there. But even if somebody jumps up and takes Neal, they want the kid from Mississippi State anyway. I think that this is a very, very positive pick. We always knew that they were going to have to go mainly defense. We'll jump ahead to my other question, answer my other question from later on. I think they're going to have to go mainly defense in this draft, except for maybe wide receiver somewhere. But you can get safety, you can get linebackers, you can get a lot of different things to go into Wink Martindale's system. And I think he fits into that system very well.
Look, we all know that the spotlight's been on this guy pretty much since he, first came on board at Oregon. He's been, the type of, he's had focus on him. There was thought he was going to come out, not this year, but the year before. He did line up, as a boundary pass rush linebacker in the 3-4 scheme that the Ducks ran. What's interesting to me is that, when his motor's going, he's physical against the run. He rushes upfield with urgency, has the skills, has the jab step, learning to efficiently patch together his rush moves. The question is, with this guy, is always been, and look, it could be just people blowing smoke. We hear this all the time. Is this a guy who is all about being a football player, or is he all about being what being a football player can do for his brand? Now, I don't know if that's just people throwing smoke or if there's anything to it. The one thing that I found interesting when those reports were coming out is that Mario Cristobal, his former coach at Oregon, said when he was asked about it by press, he goes, there's no truth to that. I don't know where these people are getting their information from. Nobody actually picked up a phone to ask me if that's who this kid is. So, I mean, look, if he comes in and he's all about the football, then I agree. On physical talent alone, this guy has the potential to be one of the most electric pass rushers in the draft based on his skill set alone. The question is, and until he answers it on the field, is whether or not he's all about the football. I think he is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think, because we know, Joe, that the Giants don't draft guys who they think have character issues.
Right. And so let me answer that, Jay, because I like how when we go back and forth like this, I think there's something about also because at Oregon, and you know how I feel about the Pac 8, 10, 12, 14, whatever the hell it is. That,
Yes, I do.
When Oregon played Stony Brook, he didn't show up as having a great game and being into the game. When they go play Arizona, when they play these garbage teams, they play a lot of awful teams in Oregon, and Oregon wasn't that good for the last couple of years. So when they go, oh, he seems to take some time off. Well, they actually played Stony Brook University, my alma mater, flew all the way out to Oregon to play a football game, and they were given 67 points and they covered. But you still have to go against that competition. And so if the guy, when he was on TV playing against USC, showed up and played really well, and that's where the guys started to go out there and scout him and saw what he is, that's the guy you're going to get in the NFL on Sundays, because that's what this is all about. It's always the top thing. It's always a big competition. And I think you've seen from Dabble and from Shane and those guys, and they're not going to let them take too many times off. I mean, we've all seen how Dabble's been handling workouts and doing different things. I think he's a high energy guy. I don't think effort's going to be the problem with this guy. And like you said, there's obviously been a lot of talk with him and a lot of conversation, and they don't have any red flags that came out. So
yeah, no, and honestly, if that's the thing, and the Giants do usually do their due diligence. The thing with me is, how is he going to fit this scheme? And that's always what it is. He played what they call a stand-up 9 technique, which means he lined up outside of tackles and tight ends, looking to strike kick out blocks and squeeze his way into creases on the perimeter. He's improved his run defense a lot better over the last year. They said it was a big area of growth for him, coming from where in 2019 he was basically a designated pass rusher. So the report is that he's become more of an all-around defensive player. They do believe that his blend of speed and power should translate at the next level. And they think he's smoothed out some of the previous inconsistencies, and he'll now be able to handle a job as an outside linebacker in the NFL. What's going to be interesting, the comparisons are to Jadeveon Clowney. So, but, I don't know if that's necessarily a good comparison or a bad comparison, depending on
talent-wise in this draft.
Maybe, comparison. But again, how does he fit in this scheme? How does he fit in that scheme? And that's what I want to see.
Well, Clowney fit pretty well when he was in Houston. I mean, it was just
he
had the talent of a lot of people. Talent-wise, I don't think there's anybody outside of Hutchinson who's better as a pass rusher than Thibodeau. I think that's probably easy.
Yeah, I think I don't think his motor. I don't think his motor is going to be the problem. If the Giants do feel like that his brand may be a bit of his focus on his brand may be a bit of an issue. There's a guy named Eli Manning that's working with the Giants organization. If you can always call and sit him down at any time and have him come in. But I just think I think about the Giants last year in the game against the Saints and how they just could not stop the run. It was giving up 6-7 yards a carry. And then this guy who had 35 and a half tackles for a loss. And the fact that the Giants really, and one of the biggest issues last year was stopping the run and giving up so many yards per run. if he can cut that down, even at least make it a second and long, third and long, something manageable that favors the Giants defense, I think it will go a long way. I think I said the sack thing, I'm not too crazy, not so, go hung about it. Coming out of college, because the level of competition isn't always as high, particularly in the Pac-10 and Pac-12. The competition kind of is a step down from what the SEC offers up. But when I think about in this scheme, and if he can force the quarterback to at least step into the pressure, where you have Leonard Williams and other guys in front of him, at least make the quarterback a little more jittery in the backfield. That's going to go a long way to help the Giants defense.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
so
you have a completely new scheme. Don't forget. So you know you're not plugging them into last year's scheme with last year's players.
Right.
You have a
Absolutely.
completely different scheme and a completely different coach. So you can't really even make those comparisons.
Joe, I want to get to you for a second because the Carolina Panthers actually did use that 6th pick on Ike Ekwonu. The first offensive tackle off the board. And Joe, you and I were talking about there's a lot of good people in this draft, but Carolina doesn't have a pick now for the rest of today and tomorrow. So why pick somebody at this spot?
Because the owners are jackass, and like he said,
that's pretty much the answer.
Himself. Yeah, and that's what he said. He said in his press conference the other day. So, I'm impatient. I'm trying to stay out of these things. I shouldn't be putting my 2 cents in. And he also said Sam Darnold had extensive skills, and I just, this is where obviously this is a non-football guy. He's a developer that thinks he's going to run a football team. He paid for Matt Rule without even interviewing the guy. He gave him all kinds of money to make him the head coach. He's just a guy that does what comes into his head, that pops in his head. So I think it's a really bad idea if you're running a football team to take a pick at number 5 for an offensive lineman and then not pick for 2 more days, because what are you going to get?
Yeah,
without a quarterback and without, it just doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I said this to Rabbi today. You have to get out of that pick. There's no way you don't trade back with somebody and pick up a couple of first and a second.
I thought Carolina, the best move would have been to trade out of this pick and try to get some kind of collateral as far as filling out other team needs to get more draft picks, because now we're not going to hear the Carolina Panthers call for another 48 hours. So that I don't get.
They're going to go play golf tomorrow. I think they're going to play golf tomorrow. The whole coach.
Listen, there's a lot of good places in Vegas to enjoy while you have no picks. So.
There's a good golf course in Vegas now.
And here's what's interesting, to me, guys, is that just looking at at the film notes I have on this guy, he was graded in Dane Brugler's draft guide as what was he, the number 1 rated offensive tackle. Okay. And here's the thing: powerful, athletic, got great reach, comfortable at pulling and operating in space. But here's the thing: he's still a work in progress in terms of technique and polish go, especially as a pass protector. Yeah, he dropped his sack total over the last year. But what's interesting to me is it fit? This is a guy who's coming out of a scheme that was primarily zone blocking. Now, if Matt Rule is going to is running that type of zone scheme in Carolina, and I have to profess I don't know, then he may be an easier fit. But my concern is you may have gotten a guy that you think you can plug in as a blindside protector. But the question is, the guy struggles, not so perfect footwork and hand placement, and that is the thing that, to me, if you're looking to find a guy who you think you're going to install as a blindside pass protector for your next franchise quarterback, that's a bit of a concern. He has a lot of question marks. Is the light bulb going to turn on, as a left tackle? Or is this a guy, or does he wind up moving, to right tackle where there's less pressure dealing with pass rushers, or even, inside at guard? If that's where he ends up, then this is a blown pick. If this guy develops into becoming, not necessarily an all pro, but, a tier one, low tier one, high tier two, left tackle, and you can count on him to keep the blind side clear so guys don't end up in your quarterback's kitchen, then it's a good pick. And I'm saying that within that 3-foot window. But I agree with all of you guys. They should have traded back. They needed draft capital. This was, in terms of overall strategy, this is a fail. In terms of the
only
pick,
thing,
it turned out to be good, but in terms of overall strategy, it's a fail.
the only way it turns out good, Jay, is they'll wind up picking third next year instead of fifth, and because they don't have a quarterback. If McCaffrey gets hurt again, and they don't have a quarterback, what good is an offensive lineman when you can't draft anybody else? So,
agreed.
All right, so the Giants had a second pick, and I'm going to go first on this one because I thought he was going to go here. They picked offensive lineman Evan Neal from Alabama, 3-year starter, amazing in the Bill O'Brien offense that they had. Started every game as a freshman, at a right tackle. Again, I know, Joe, you were just talking about Alabama players reaching the peak at Alabama, but if you've just seen, especially at the skill positions, what Alabama players have done over the last few years, I think this is a fine pick. He is unique flexibility for his size, massive frame. I think he has pretty much all of the capabilities at 6'0" or 6'1" at 337 pounds.
6'7", 337.
6'7",
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, 337. Started 40 games over the last 3 seasons, and most importantly, he again can play 3 different positions. He has double-digit starts in his career at left tackle, right tackle, and left guard. And I think what the Giants are going to need on that offensive line is flexibility. Very good pick here. I think they would have been happy with either one of the top 2 offensive linemen, and they got this one.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think the flexibility thing is really key. And a lot of people have said that because there was some talk about taking a center from this place or whatever, which later on the 4th, 5th round wouldn't be a bad idea, but you need the guy who can play different positions on this line, and he's probably going to start, but you still need to have that flexibility to put him in different places and see where he is. Plus, and again, I wasn't knocking him by saying because you played Alabama, you may have already reached your peak, but it's good that they come in at a professional way.
I was I would say that too. I think about you only got Thomas on one side, and now you have Neal that could kind of be somewhat of a bookend as far as protecting Daniel Jones. But also his versatility, I think, is a huge plus side to Evan Neal, and the fact that he has played in different positions and has been able to stay on the field. I think that's the most important thing. 40 games in the last 3 seasons in different positions. So that's a big thing for the Giants. Hey, look, this draft has really worked out well for the Giants. I mean, they could have gone either way as far as alignment and defensive end. It just so happened one of the 3 top defense edge rushers or defensive ends fell into the lap, and that gave them the flexibility to now, okay, we could go with alignment at number 7. So I think the way because of what the Texans did at number 3, it kind of really allowed the Giants to play either side. And it's worked out very well. They get the rusher that they needed, the guy who can be flexible on defense, but they have a lineman who could be kind of a put in and plug in guy too, because he has played guard, he plays tackle, and it's something happens with the Giants O-line, which we have seen in the last several years, that you have a guy who has a reputation of being able to stay on the field, and he's strong hands, quick feet, very well. He's obviously playing with Nick Saban. You always get the feel of being on a professional environment and playing an NFL level style offense as far as zone blocking is concerned. So I think this will definitely help, particularly in a running game when you have Saquon Barkley trying to bounce back, and the fact that you do have a Daniel Jones, who the Giants have done a good job of being able to keep right side up the last few years.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I mean, you talk about his his versatility, and that's always a good thing to have coming into the NFL. The thing is if you think about the knocks on him, what people call out as his weaknesses, that he doesn't have elite lateral range in pass protection, can be beaten to the corner. He struggles, against, high level pass rushers. I mean, here's the thing though. All of the things that are knocks against him as a left tackle are not going to be an issue, because coming to the Giants, he's not replacing Andrew Thomas at left tackle. He's going to be slotted at right tackle, where you don't go up against the elite pass rusher on the opposing team. So he gets to use the physicality that serves him well as a run blocker. His weaknesses in pass protection aren't as egregious an issue, and those can be coached up out of him. This is a guy who can get to the second level. He's good out, and he has issues in space, but it seems like he knows how to hunt those second level matchups, when he's on running plays and in screens. This is a guy who I think you slot him in at right tackle from day one. Yeah, he's going to learn on the job a little bit, but I think this is the right tackle of the future for the Giants. I like this pick. This was my pick for them, though I had him going at 5, not at 7. But it's a solid pick, and I think the Giants now have 2 bookend tackles that I think you can kind of build the foundation of that line. And considering that their free agent moves brought in interior, solid interior linemen, not great, not tier 1, but solid football guys in the interior. I think hopefully this will bring enough of an improvement that, that'll translate to better year on the ground with Saquon Barkley, and, getting to see Daniel Jones do exactly what we think he's capable of when he actually isn't running for his life.
Yeah, that's kind of the key, because, and I said, I would have been fine with them taking the guy from NC State and the guy from Alabama in their first 2 picks.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the specter of Thibodeau at number 5, because again, he has been bouncing around in every spot over the last month. I think that specter just gave the Giants, this is a good toy that we can have in our system. Okay, quickly, Jay, I know we'll get to him later on in our skill position pick. Drake London of USC. What's the fit of him going to the Falcons?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, think about who's running that offensive scheme. And you've got Arthur Smith, who, was previously offensive coordinator in Tennessee. Think about who put up big seasons at wide receiver playing in that scheme. You're talking about Davis, who's now with the Jets. You're talking about
Corey Davis, yes.
Corey Davis. You're talking about Marquise Brown, right? You're talking about guys who in this scheme have put up seriously huge numbers. So what's interesting to me, I think London fits no matter where he goes. This guy to me, and I'll get deeper into the analysis, because in terms of, I'll give you a spoiler. When, the wide receiver position look, this was my guy to look at. And yeah, I'm a little biased. I watched him play for 3 years. I've seen the growth. USC has been really good at producing really good NFL wide receivers for a long time now. I mean, you think about the 2 most recent ones, talking about Robert Woods, who's coming off the ACL, but before that really came into his own. And then you're talking about Michael Pittman, who was, maybe a little more under the radar for a lot of other people besides me, but I'm not surprised at that guy's production. Guys like that, guys like London, he's going to make an impact wherever he goes. He's not the type, he's right. And look at the NFL comparison that the NFL Network is putting up is Larry Fitzgerald. And it's pretty appropriate, though. London is a more physical wide receiver. He's a stronger wide receiver.
Well, by the way, Jay, I know you're going to get a little more into this when we get into our segment, but I think for Atlanta, especially with
he's going to slot in as the number one wide receiver, guys, because of the stuff that happened with in the offseason with Calvin Ridley. So I like.
I mean,
pick. It's
you
really
had
the
to
first
replace
big
that position, and honestly,
you did. I mean, there's a lot of things. I don't know what. Again, like Houston, I don't know what Atlanta's plan is. I think they are sort of punting on this year, Anthony. I'll let you talk right now. I think they're kind of sort of punting on this year, and they kind of want something for the future. You know, Marcus Mariota is not the answer to this team.
Yeah,
no,
but I think of it like with the Atlanta Falcons is that Calvin Ridley and his suspension, I think, facilitated this draft pick more than anything because you got we know Marcus Mariota is a bridge quarterback at this point, but you still gotta give him something to throw to outside besides Kyle Pitts over the middle, who is a tremendous tight end. But you do have a second option in London who can also go up for the 50-50 ball. At least you want to give Mariota a chance to be able to do something as far as this Falcons offense. And like I said, not having Ridley going into next season is really, I think, the catalyst for the Falcons making this draft pick.
Agreed. 100% agree, guys. The Seattle Seahawks, by the way, we'll get to next at number 9. Joe, quickly, I want to talk. I know you were talking about what the Giants are going to do for the rest of this draft. You tell us more about why you think defense is the biggest concern for them.
Well, I just think you put a lot of money last year into free agency and into draft capital on the offense, and so you have a Saquon Barkley who's coming back, who's finally, as he said, I finally have an off season where I'm not rehabbing. I just have a regular off season. I'm just getting stronger. I'm just learning the playbook. I'm just being with the guys and all that kind of stuff. You got Galladay, who you've invested a lot of money in. He's going to be on the team. He seems to be all in with the new coaching staff. He showed up for the workouts. He's talking to other guys. He said he's the one who called Tony and said, you need to get in here. So you have Tony, you have Shepard re-signed. You're going to need to get a tight. They have about 5 tight ends again in camp. Maybe you get one later on in this draft too. But I think that once you finish building that offensive line, you're going to have to trust those guys to be the playmakers that they are and go from there. Maybe, as Jay had said in some of our conversations, you do get a wide receiver somewhere in the 3rd, 4th round. They have a bunch of picks coming in there. So I think that defense just makes more sense to get Wink Martindale, his attacking type players. You're going to need to get another safety. You're going to need to get a couple of other guys. We don't know what's going on with Bradbury, if they're going to keep him or not. So I think defense is really the key to get that depth going there and to build up a defense and then let the offense see if these guys who you signed for a lot of money last year when you weren't the GM and the coach can come through and step up and be something, and then you worry about that if that doesn't happen. So I think you need to concentrate defense, and that's what this draft is. There's not a lot of running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers in the top half of this draft. So I think you need to build that depth on defense for the rest of the draft.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with you that about the wide receivers, Joe. There's a lot of depth at that position. So it'll be interesting to see how they go. It's going to be interesting to me to see how many wide receivers do get drafted here. Because while there isn't, there's not, to me, none of them jump out at me as elite level. There are a couple who would be, but there are guys coming off injury, and we'll get into that later. So I think that kind of tempers it a bit. But overall, I like the depth of this draft at wide receiver. So it'll be interesting to see, not necessarily how many go in the first round, but how many go in the first 3.
Yeah.
That's why I said top. I meant top half of today. You're not going to see.
Oh, okay. All right. Fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I'm gonna co-sign with Joe as far as the Giants defense. They need more depth. Really the only position I can see them with any kind of depth is middle linebacker, because you had Crowder there, but he was taking over for an injured Blake Martinez, so you get back this season. So I'm just looking at it like this, like the Giants, I think still need see something in the defensive backfield. I think there's, like I said, there's a lot of holes that the Giants could definitely kind of fill out. So it'd be interesting to see where the Giants go later on in this draft. Obviously, they obviously they got what they needed at 5 and 7 respectively. So, like I said, we'll just see how it goes in the second round. But I definitely think, for me, I would love to see them go for another pass rusher because you can never have too many of those. A guy I'm looking for, I don't know if we want to talk about it now. Or I can,
No. Let's
Yeah.
We'll talk about it now. I kind of want to go quickly, and I'm very happy to say that unless the Jets pick a quarterback at number 10 with Charles Cross, offensive tackle, Mississippi State, going number 9 to Seattle, one thing that I'm very happy about to say is no quarterbacks went top 10.
Agreed.
No one traded into the top 10 for a quarterback. And now that really becomes the other part of this draft. We'll get to that in a moment. But I think schematically, we see Carolina, who doesn't really have the greatest quarterback situation. Although if me and Joe were talking this week, all the sunshine and rainbows and them saying that Sam Darnold is our starter.
Yeah, okay.
Seattle is now looking like they're going to at least possibly go into the season with a battery of Geno Smith and Drew Lock. Well, they have a chance to get someone. Yeah, you can say that, but again, Jay, the quarterback. I want to talk about this.
Let me tell you
quarterback
something.
level is so bad. Stop. Let me talk. Let me talk for a second. I think the quarterback level is just so bad this year that I think Seattle is willing to at least take a chance on depending on the rest of this team because they're going to just need a game manager at quarterback. There's nobody right now left in this draft, or unless you get Baker Mayfield, which I don't think they're thinking of getting, who is really considered a guy who you're going to give up anything for. And I think Seattle wants to build around something, not give up something for a quarterback.
All right, Rabbi, I understand where your point. I understand your point, and there's 100% there's logic to it. Here's my thing, and the reason I keep saying no, they're not, because I have a hard time believing, and Pete Carroll can say whatever client-facing PR platitudes that he wants, but if they're going into this season and their only options at quarterback are those two guys, no disrespect to them, then they're punting on this season. That is the only way I can see.
Some teams are. That's a tough
and that's the thing. So that's what's interesting to me. Look, I like the pick of Cross. He's a good pass protector. And they're going to probably try now if they're going into this season with those two as their options at quarterback. Yeah, I got to look at Pete Carroll and go, dude, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Okay. The pick is in for the Jets, but I will spoil it for you because I kind of want to talk about it.
No, I want to see it show up. This is part of the fun.
Okay, we'll see it show up, but I will mention very quickly. I think this pick should easily be Jamison Williams of Alabama just because of the history that he's had as a very good wide receiver. And I know the Jets are looking for playmakers and they're going to get them. So that seems to be a logical pick here. Do you think wide receiver is the way they should go?
Yes, I do.
Well, here's the thing. Just remember, Rabbi, in our chats and around our production meeting, you and I both agreed that a certain edge rusher would be a pick for them, and that certain edge rusher is still on the board, so they may not necessarily go wide receiver here. So it's going to be interesting.
Who is that edge rusher? I'm kind of curious.
Jermaine Johnson out of FSU, who is the number.
Yeah,
4
I'm a lot surprised at Johnson dropping this far right now, and that's funny.
Well, no, I mean it's not overwhelmingly a surprise because, as I said, how the third pick played out would determine how 4, 5, and how the rest of them went between between 4 and 10. So what's going to be interesting to see is, you're right, Williams is on the board. There's a couple of guys who potentially could be wouldn't be too much of a reach as a top 10 pick at wide receiver. Johnson as an edge rusher, not a pick, not a reach either. So it'll be interesting to see which way they go. And the commissioner,
who would be a reach at wide receiver though for you?
I think either one of the Ohio State guys might be a little bit of a reach here, but they went with one anyway.
Guess what? They picked one anyway because Garrett Wilson of Ohio State is the number 10 pick.
You know what? I'm
Wow.
2 for 2 with the Jets right now because I had him going at number 10 to the Jets.
You did, yes.
I'm
Good
actually 2
pick.
for 2. I bet $1 with the Jets tonight.
So Anthony, since you called it, go ahead.
Go
Give us
ahead.
the rundown on Garrett Wilson out of Ohio State.
Yeah, started all 8 games for the Buckeyes in 2020, obviously. Big part of their offense, 12 receiving touchdowns and 11 starts last year. Had 27 catches for 371 and 6 touchdowns over his last 3 games in 2021. To set the speed, single coverage. His ability, the thing is though, his ability to get separation, I think, was kind of sets him apart from his counterpart, Chris Olave, who I looked at, has later on we'll talk about.
We'll talk about Chris Olave later on in our wide receiver set.
Yeah, it's Olave, but Olave, by the way,
Wow,
as far as his last name. But yeah, I look at it like this: that okay, now you got the corner as far as the Jets defense. Now you give Wilson connection maybe, because Zach Wilson didn't have a lot of weapons out in the wide receiver court. And obviously Crowder was a guy who was off and on the field. He was supposed to be kind of a reliable guy, but he was off and on. And the Jets right now, I think there's anything that he would have to clean up is his route running. It's a little raw, It's a little segmented, and he's gonna have to learn that he's gonna make those cuts a lot quicker, a little more decisive. Because and I said this years ago with Jeremy Shockey when he came into the league, when you're stretching out a route, you allow defensive backs and free safeties to undercut that route. And that's something he's going to have to clean up because NFL defensive backs, they'll react. The reaction time is a lot quicker. And it's a quarterback, and Zach Wilson's had a hard time kind of getting the ball out of his hands, mainly because he's been running for his dear life, but also being late with passes. And that's something he's going to have to clean up as far as his route running. But everything else, he got solid height, adequate build, outstanding separation speed. He gives him a great with the 50-50 ball. I think he just gives he'll give Zach Wilson, if he can stay on the field, obviously more of a consistent receiver who can move the chains too. He can be a deep threat. He can move he can be an intermediate guy who can move the chains, break a short pass into a big play. So he definitely has the explosive ability to be a number 1 receiver in the National Football League. But there is some days he's going to have to clean up, like the route running, as an example. So,
and what's interesting to me, Anthony, and I probably should not have said that he would be a reach. I mean, he was Brugler's number 1 rated wide receiver on his draft board. So it's interesting, and that's the thing that you notice about him is that doesn't necessarily have the ideal body to be a number 1 wide receiver. He's only 6 feet tall, only 183 pounds. You're right, Anthony. The route running, he's a little too loose as a route runner, and not as sharp as you'd like him to be with his body movements and his footwork. Not necessarily needs to improve his strength and his power, or else, that functional strength is right now, it doesn't seem like he may have enough to fend off the type of aggressive cornerbacks he's going to see in the NFL. And this is a guy who, like you said, tremendous ball skills on the 50-50 stuff. But he seems to drop too many easy passes. There is a bit of a durability question about him. Look, he left Ohio State as top 10 in school history in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdown receptions. He's a guy who has played both in the slot, which was primarily his position in 2020, played primarily outside as the X receiver, in 2021 in Ryan Day's spread offense. It's interesting to me that, this is a guy who actually never led Ohio State in receiving in any one of his 3 seasons, but his production did increase each year. One of only 6 Division I guys to average more than 95 receiving yards and 1 touchdown per game last year. So it's going to be interesting how he fits. I don't know that he automatically jumps out at me as a guy who is an immediate, schematic fit for the type of offense LaFleur is running over there. doesn't necessarily have elite speed, but he does know how to get to the top of his speed quickly in a route. He doesn't know how to create separation. But I don't know. I don't know if, like, to me, this is a player and scheme, this type of fit, maybe a little bit of this, and it'll kind of work into this as they go. Look, I mean, if he can uncover, and improve on his ability to, uncover and get separation at all three levels, that, then he can become a pretty good wide receiver in the NFL. But to me, I don't know if he qualifies as a 1. To me, I think he's a really good, a top level number 2. Top level number 2 to me is where he maxes out. So it remains to be seen. Like I said, he's good. I don't know if this would have been the right guy for me if I'm taking it to Jets and I'm picking at 10. I don't know if this was the way I would have gone.
So you say he should spend a little more time on the jug machine in the offseason, work on them hands. Considering the Jets did lead the league in drop passes last year, I think that is a bit of a concern. But I think it's like we think of actually, I don't know what kind of offense Matt LaFleur tried to run last year because it was so bad. But at this point, I think with Wilson, you do get a guy who can grow into the scheme. Like I said, the route runner is really the major concern. That can be cleaned up. He does need to be a little more crisper coming out of his breaks as far as footwork. But when you think about his ability to, when you get the ball into his hands, and he is a great playmaker, he's somebody I look at you can run receiver screens with him and let him make plays after the catch. Something that the Jets desperately needed because they just didn't have enough of it. This is, like I said, I think when you try to just give Zach Wilson anything to give him anything, something to work with offensively. You're trying to protect them. They had an issue on one side of the offensive line last year, but that kind of cleaned itself up. The Jets also was down in so many games. They got forced into throwing the football, which was a nightmare for a young quarterback in his rookie season when you have to throw the ball to get back into a game. So I think that the Jets can be more of a ball control offense and kind of not have to play behind the 8 ball so much. And I think you'll see more of what.
Anthony, definitely. We'll see how they are going into this season. Guys, I want to quickly go back into the Giants here since we're finally out of the top 10 and talk quickly as they have in the next 2 days of the NFL draft. They'll have 3 tomorrow. They'll have 3 picks on day 2, 1 second and 2 thirds. So let's play ourselves a little GM here, put ourselves in Joe Shane's eyes. Joe, anything else you want to mention about, you mentioned earlier about just picking a defensive player. I want to go to Jay for a very quick second. What do you think the Giants' needs are for the rest of the draft, and who do you think is a possible target? Jay?
It's interesting. I mean, I understand where you guys are coming from, in terms of the focus, but I mean, you look at the top needs for the Giants for the remainder of the draft. Outside linebacker, already got their offensive tackle. Safety, is an interesting option for them. Cornerback, who I thought they would take, in the first round, but it didn't work out that way. And they need depth at tight end. But the other position that may be kind of flying under the radar, but it's one that jumps out to me, and that's wide receiver. And the interesting guy that I'm looking at is Sky Moore, who, 5'9", 195-pounder out of Western Michigan, should be available in the second round, where the Giants have the 4th and the 36th picks in that round. 39th ranked, this is the 7th ranked wide receiver on Brugler's draft board. And what's interesting to me about him is that this is a guy who think about who Daniel Jones's essentially safety blanket was, right? Sterling Shepard, who's a guy who plays primarily in the slot, not necessarily a big receiver, but he finds openings, he makes catches, he moves chains. And Shep's out all of next year. This guy, Moore, could be a guy who kind of slides right into that slot. You know, this is a guy who's got short area quickness to win at the line or out of his breaks. You know, he doesn't go deep very often, but he's shown he's got the skills to do it. He runs strong, balanced routes. He knows how to utilize stutter steps. He's got good functional strength. You know, a guy who can be physical after the catch. You know, here's the thing. Only 5 Division I players to average at least 7.9 catches per game. Only 1 of 4 with at least 95 catches for 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns. You know, yeah, he kind of needs to, you know, get better at his setup and, you know, creating separation against NFL cornerbacks. And yeah, you know, you talk about 85% of his targets came within 20 yards of the line of scrimmage, but that's kind of the description of a slot receiver. So 3-year starter. I mean, he played in the boundary in their, you know, in Western Michigan's RPO based scheme. So he played a lot of slot and outside. He looks at the game through the view of a quarterback because that's kind of what he was in high school. I think this guy's going to be there. Yeah, he projects best as an NFL slot receiver, but here's the thing. You're not going to have Shep this year. He re-signed for a 1-year deal, basically. May not be around after next year, even if he's 100% healthy. I think this is a guy you can get, and I think he's going to fill that role. And it'd be interesting to see if this is the type of guy that they go to if they look to go wide receiver at any point in this draft. I think this would be a good pick for them. It's a question of, you know, how they perceive potential need at wide receiver. Nice to see Galladay at OTAs. Nice to see Kadarius Toney finally show up. But here's the interesting thing, and everybody goes, "Oh, they're making the effort." You know, they're all in on the culture and wanting to, you know, do everything they can to improve this team. Yeah, just remember this, guys. Shane is notorious for putting workout bonuses in guys' contracts. Both Toney and Galladay have those in there. So it's kind of behooves them to show up or else it's costing them money.
Well, no, it's costing them money that they don't actually have. So it's like playing the lottery. So Anthony, go right ahead.
Yeah, I would, like I said earlier, I was with Joe as far as I think the Giants need to focus a little bit more on defensive depth. A guy I'm looking at is Christian Harris in Alabama, and I thought about the Giants need some kind of speed and help on the outside in the linebacker position, particularly on the weak side. Last year, he played in 15 games, 80 tackles, 11.5 ball loss, 5.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 3 pass defense. One of his best traits is the fact that he does bring athleticism, communication. He's a versatile outside linebacker, and also coming out of Nick Saban's very sophisticated defensive schemes. The learning curve shouldn't be all that great. But you just he's already kind of stepped out of a pro-style defense that and being able to be a signal caller as well. He is undersized. I don't think that's something that shouldn't be overlooked. He's only 6'4". I think he's like a little under 230. So that's pretty small for somebody who would be like on the inside. So I don't think a middle linebacker position would suit him. I think he would fit perfectly on the weak side. Defensively, and I feel like and also he's a capable blitzer too. I think if you're going to be more aggressive, you want to call him on blitzers. To have a guy who could be able to play coverage, stop the run, but come on the occasional blitz as well, I think would really help. The Giants, and I think Joe will even co-sign on this. When they're at their best, and we saw this a couple of years ago during the 2020 season, and when they had guys who can plug in and had that versatility, because like I said, we don't know what kind of defensive scheme is going to be replayed per se, but when they have the versatility and to be able to play multiple formations, is what the Giants at their best. And we saw it kind of in the second half of last year as well. Like they got to a slow start, but then they got better as the season went on. I think Harris would be a great fit as far as being able to come in, or at least to start out, come out, and be kind of like a 25-50% snaps guy, and then play his way up from there. There is some things as far as he may he's a little wild at times. He does, so He's gonna have to show a little more discipline as far as reacting, being able to read and react to the offense. But as far as being able to give the Giants a little something, as far as a little depth on their linebacking core, I think he'd be a great fit.
Got our first
I'm
trade,
gonna-
Rabbi.
No, we have that's actually, I'll talk to you in a second. That's actually our second trade. We'll get to that in a moment. The first trade, the Saints went up to 11 to get the other Ohio State wide
Right.
receiver, Chris Olave.
Good pick for them.
But
This is-
quickly, guys, you don't have to look at this. We can talk about that in a little bit. But I quickly agree with Joe, and we're going to get Joe out in just a second here. I actually have 2 picks for you at the quarterback position, since they did not go with that. These are second round grades. They're both Conference USA players. One of them is the guy who played alongside Sauce Gardner for so many years, and that's Kobe Bryant, Coby, and did after Kobe Bryant. He's got a very good size. He's a very good size athlete. Only penalized once in 2021, and you're going with another quarterback who was essentially targeted only 3 times a game because of how good he was. So imagine trying to be that other guy in the system. And he is a guy who has his Mamba mentality, has played 50 starts in the last 4 seasons, and has 45 passes dependent in that starts. He does have a little bit of production on the field against the pass and run, and you can't really see him in the slot. So that's a little bit of an issue. The other guy who might be a little better of a pick at this is Marcus Jones. He has a lot of speed. He does have punt returning speed. He was the most versatile player in college football, winning the 2021 Paul Hornung Award. And but he does have a very below average growth. He's 5'8", 174. But he is a guy who can be a pest. And I think that's someone who the Giants might need. And Joe, you're talking about the fact that the Giants have a choice to make on James Bradbury just this week. And that could be something that could affect what they do with the rest of this draft.
Yeah, I think it depends on, I think the way the draft comes out is going to have a little bit to do with that. I think there's something brewing there that they're going to offer him some way of redoing his contract or offer him, figure out a trade for him or something. They've been very, very open about having conversations with him. And it's not at a point where he's demanding anything or they are. So I think it's in a good spot. But I agree with everybody. I think, Jay, you're right. I think they need a possession type receiver. You know, you have to see if Slayton's going to come back and be healthy. And again, all these guys that were out, but they're all down the field receivers. So I think getting a possession guy, I think getting depth, and again, versatility. Even though Joe Judge didn't do well as far as coach, that was what they always taught, right? Was versatility, guys who could play different positions, guys that were willing to move around. And I think that continues, especially since you have so many picks. You still have 7 more picks in this draft, and I think they move around. I'm not sure that those are the only. I don't think those numbers stay the same. I think they're going to move around a little bit in the later rounds, but to get a few more picks next year also. But they have 7 more picks, so I think all of those are value picks. All of those are special teams guys who can play linebacker, guys who can play safety, guys who can play corner. Get all those guys in there, get a few more possession guys. The good thing about having so many injuries is guys like David Sills got to play a lot last year. There's a couple of other receivers that are there that can fill in some spots. So again, it's a rebuilding year. They're not trying to recreate the wheel in 1 year. They're not going out like crazy. They have no cap space at all, which is something that they're going to have to deal with next year. So I think this is a great start, though. I think they got exactly who they wanted. They got exactly the positions they wanted. And it fell perfectly for them that they could get both guys without having to make a choice. They actually got exactly what they wanted. So pretty excited about that. And I think, again, I think you're going to see some movement in the next couple of days with all those picks left that they have.
All right, guys.
It's gonna be interesting to see.
Joe Tufaro has to leave us for other stuff. Thank you, Joe, for your insight tonight. We'll have a lot more football to talk before we get to training camp time. Where can we see you, Joe? Are you anywhere going on media over the next few months?
Not at this moment. We're still working on the referee thing to see if it's going to be an ongoing thing. It was really good for the playoffs, but I don't see how it can really continue on a weekly basis because there's just too many games going on. So we're working on that. I'm going to be in New York for the next few weeks working on a few different projects. So we will let you know.
Sounds
All
good.
right.
Always a pleasure,
All
my
right,
friend.
Thank you,
Well, great to have
Joe.
you
Enjoy
on.
the rest of your night.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
At Tough Dan, by the way, on all platforms, if you want to hear any of the rumblings of Mr. Joe Tufaro.
Take
Take care,
pal.
my friend.
All right,
Take
take
care,
care,
man.
Joe.
All right. While people start hanging up on Zoom, all right, we're going to talk about the Jets. They also have 7 picks after tonight. A little more plentiful though. 2 seconds, 3 thirds, and 2 fourth rounders is what they got. It's a pretty decent quality haul. Please note, this is before trades, and I'm not doing the math. Sorry, you're not paying me for that. Anyway, Anthony, where are the Jets going next?
You know what, Jay? I hate to do this to you. I know you hate spoilers, but you can't be happy. The Sixers are moving on. I just saw the score alert, so you can sleep peacefully tonight.
128.96, by the way.
Whoa, which means
Yeah.
they blew
Yeah,
him out
it
in the
was-
second
yeah.
half.
Don't-
All
yeah,
right.
it's-
Yeah.
I know we can talk basketball another night, but that is that's what we call a statement win, if there ever was
So
one.
You know what?
32.97.
Considering how much of a house of horrors Scotiabank Arena has been for them in the playoffs, I am going, phew!
Yeah, it exercised 2019. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, definitely. All right, back to football.
Back
So-
to football.
Okay, but for me, the Jets, you know what? I know it's not a high priority on their to-do list as far as draft picks, but I'd like to see them go after a running back at some point in this draft. And a guy I'm looking at is Kenneth Walker III out of Michigan State. And Jay, you'll be happy to hear this. One of the comparisons is to Willie Parker. He's some guy who played the Steelers. I don't know.
Yeah,
Both
he's
a
a
big
guy
run,
who knows
Super
a
Bowl
thing or two about
40.
playing running back.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Jay's really happy that a guy who scored 5 touchdowns against Michigan this year is being compared to Willie Parker in the draft.
Yeah.
But we love the fact.
Hey.
Like Willie Parker, he knew how to take care of the football too. Think about this: 1 fumble on 276 carries in 2021. That is Curtis Martin levels. Okay, that's the only guy I know who really hardly ever fumbled a football. And Marshall Faulk went like almost 2 years before he lost a fumble. But look, he's a comeback, powerful runner. I think he was fitting well. If the Jets decide to go by committee, I know they got a couple of guys still already, but when I look at Walker, what he brings to the table and being able to be a receiver out in the backfield, stairs, he can pick up run lanes in any direction. Very fast, very agile. Know how to create something out of nothing. Over 1,000 yards on the ground. Actually, let me see. Give me just a second, because my laptop went screwy for a second. Think about this: 1,600 rushing yards, 18 rushing scores and 12 starts. 6 in a Heisman Trophy voting everybody opt out of a bowl game these days. But when you look at those when you look at those numbers, 1,600 yards rushing are only 263 carries. That is close to 7 yards a carry if you do the math. That is something that you do in a job video game when you give your creative player a 99 and he's virtually unstoppable. I do that to myself all the time. But I look at Walker as being someone who I think will really give Zach Wilson another weapon out of the backfield, a receiver, a guy you can run screens with. Well, I always thought that the Jets should have had more screen passes. When you have a young quarterback, you want to make things easier for him. You want to get him into a rhythm. And Walker being another target has a guy who come out of the backfield. You can split him out wide. I think that's something that the Jets should really be interested in looking at as far as the second and maybe even the late second round. Obviously the second round. If he falls, maybe the third round. But I think the Jets, I think the Jets right now is kind of playing with house money. They've had a great round one. Round two, I think they can really help out Zach Wilson a little bit more by giving him another additional weapon. Maybe, like I said, they have several picks, so I think running back would be a nice little niche to what could be potentially be a really good weekend for the Jets.
What's interesting to me, I mean, look, he didn't get a lot of touches in the passing game because that's not Michigan State's scheme. But what the number that jumped out at me when I was looking at him, 1,168 yards after contact to lead Division I. That's a guy who knows how to hit a hole, can take a hit, and he does not go down on the first hit. And if you're looking for a guy to be who could conceivably either be part of a committee or maybe kind of take more of a number one running back role, it would be an interesting pick if they go that way. For me, guys, I'm looking at Logan Hall out of Houston.
Ooh.
And the reason being, Rabbi rolled in my favor. I'm gonna try not to cross.
No, please indulge. Go ahead. I mean, how about it too?
He's 6'6", 283. He has a round two grade, late first round, early second round grade. He's listed as an edge rusher, but what strikes me as interesting is that this is a guy who in the 2 years he was a starter at Houston, while he played primarily as a 3-technique defensive tackle, as well as spent snaps lining up as a 5-technique defensive tackle, nose tackle, as well as an edge rusher. So I look at him not so much as the Jets adding an edge rusher, though considering they didn't take one in the first round, he could potentially work out that way. But I think this is a type of guy who can potentially play 3-4, play defensive end in a 3-4. He can play defensive tackle on a 4-man rush. He can fit anywhere along the line. And I think that's kind of what you're looking to get here when you're looking at somebody like this late in the, early in the second round. So, look, the guy needs to do some work, needs to improve against the run. He's a little inconsistent with his hand exchange. He's got to learn how to unlock better. Got to improve some counter techniques, and you wonder about, the career production doesn't seem to match the talent level. There's a guy with a high motor. There's a guy who's got some moves. I like the versatility, for him as a good fit for the Jets, especially when like we said at the top, when we were surprised that, the Jets didn't take a guy like Jermaine Johnson at 4, as a pass rusher, because Saleh is so big on generating a pass rush out of his 4 guys. I think if Hall's a guy that you'll find available, the Jets have the 3rd pick in the second round. I can see him being there. He wouldn't be a bad addition because this is a guy you can slot anywhere along the line and he'll do some damage for you. Even if he's just, in a rotation on the defensive line, you got to have depth if you're really relying on your front 4 to be the force that drives, your defensive scheme. So if he's available, I think this would be a solid pick for the Jets in the second round.
And I would like to give you a wide receiver that I think the Jets should pick, and this is a stat because John Mechie III is not going to be ready for opening day, so to speak, and he may not even be ready for most of this season. But you got the Alabama pedigree. You have the Alabama pedigree. He is an athletic, detail-oriented route runner. He is quick to dissect coverage. He can go once he's back at full strength. His 0 to 60 rate is ridiculous. He wants to be uncovered and wants to be a guy who goes for those yards after catch. He is a great blocker. He is a workhorse. 4-star recruit out of high school, not a 5-star recruit, but is a guy who is just can multi-purpose for your team. Average size and speed, yes, but he knows how to run routes. He can be your slot guy for years and years to come. He tore his ACL. Apparently, that was a thing for Alabama this past postseason. One of the reasons why Georgia ended up winning in the college football playoff in the end. But once he makes that full recovery from his ACL tear, I can see him easily being the quality number 2 receiver in the NFL. And if you saw what the Jets did, I think they reached a little bit for their first round pick. But I think what you saw with the Jets being as close as they were in the Tyreek Hill sweepstakes, rumors were they had the package to get him. It's just Tyreek didn't want to go there over Miami. You know that the Jets want to get playmakers for Zach Wilson. And as I say, get as many as you possibly can. This is definitely a position of need. I think what Anthony said about the running backs is true, but there are people who did very well in that backfield last year for the Jets who definitely deserve a second chance in this season, just because you don't know what their games are.
I'm not saying like.
Yeah, I understand, but I think the one thing with Walker is he's not a guy who should be part of the running back by committee. He's the best running back in that draft, and he has the capability of being, I'll even go another step further, Najee Harris, like with his workhorse ability in 2021. Harris wasn't the greatest in his yards per play, but he was the focal point of that offense in a lot of ways. So I'm looking for value here. You're going to probably be able to get Mechie in the 3rd, 4th round. I think that's. All right, let's move on to our final topic of the night, and that's skill positions. We're going to look at the stars. We're going to look at the big things. This is what the rest of the NFL draft is about. And a quarterback has still not been taken yet, and I'm so happy. You know the guy from that one place who did that thing back then. Yeah. Let's start with quarterbacks. This is the first time since 2017 that the number 1 pick hasn't been a quarterback. And we are currently at the number 14 pick. And we still have no quarterbacks. And 2 people have traded to not get quarterbacks.
Yep.
But there are
I gotta
serviceable.
I like this
love
pick.
that pick. We'll get to that pick, I think, in our wrap up. But there are serviceable possible future starters on this board at the quarterback position. Tell me a quarterback that we should look into the next few days, Jack.
I mean, look, you tell me. You want me to talk Willis, or do you want me to talk Pickett? Who do you want me to talk?
I want you to talk whichever. I want you to talk whichever one you feel like, because that's your one. That's 1 and 2 on many people's boards right now.
It is. You know, and we you know, depending on the time, we can circle back. The guy who has piqued my interest only because you know, when you're, you know, I'm a Pittsburgh Steeler guy. You guys, you know this about me. And, you know, the quarterback that's been talked about a lot by the media in Steeler Town is Kenny Pickett. Plays in the same, practices in the same facility as the Steelers, so they've seen a lot of him. He's a very interesting pick, you know, for whoever winds up with him. You know, this is a guy who has high level awareness in almost every facet of playing the position. He's got balanced, efficient throwing mechanics. He's accurate, you know, regardless of, you know, his base. He throws a catchable ball. When he has time, he can work through his reads. He understands the situation he's in, the defense that's in front of him. You know, he doesn't have an elite arm. Willis definitely has the bigger cannon, if you will. But, you know, Pickett can drive the football from the opposite hash. And we all know that the hard 17-yard out from the opposite hash is the big throw in the NFL. You know, he's comfortable throwing, you know, from the pocket and from different platforms and off schedule, though he is more comfortable going right. He doesn't have a sense of where the heat's coming from without dropping his eyes. He's pretty solid at identifying pressures, pre-snap, and altering protections to kind of match that. Yeah, you know, there are 2 key weaknesses with him. One that I dismiss, and that's the smaller hands. You know, what is it? 9 inches is considered the baseline, and he's a little under that. The last check-in at his hands were 8 5/8 inches, and he wore gloves on both hands in college. Part of that was for grip. Part of it is, you know, it's Pittsburgh. It gets cold in the winter. The issue with the other thing with him is it's a ball security issue. And those of us who, you know, follow the Giants every year, we kind of know what that's like. Pickett had 38 career fumbles, 6 last year. And his pocket presence still remains a bit of a work in progress. He doesn't always trust the protection. It's because he got beat up a lot in 2020. Offensive line play was better last year. So this is insane. He had the second highest drop back time in Division I, 3.2 seconds. Remember, guys, what'll be interesting to see is how he reacts in the NFL, where that's definitely going to drop, because 2.5 is, if you're lucky, you'll get that much. So what's interesting is that he played Mark Whipple's scheme at Pittsburgh is a shotgun pro style scheme. So a lot of what Pickett played in last year does translate. So I'm not overly concerned. I think this is a guy who can be a solid, placement in the NFL. When he's in rhythm, when he's comfortable with the concept that's running, he's got good ball placement. He has ability to help the receiver make the play. He's pretty decent at throwing his receiver open. It's a question of, is he going to recognize that the windows that he had in college are going to be a lot smaller in the NFL and not do what we saw Zach Wilson do all of last year? Is this a guy who's going to hang in there and go to his second and third read and deliver, as opposed to, being one and done because he's feeling the heat? So we'll kind of see how that goes. We're going to see, he does need to kind of improve his comfort level with concepts that require him to move off his initial aiming point. He's a little inconsistent getting his eyes and body in line when he has to progress across the field. So, sometimes his eyes are going to fall, which is not a good thing. Good at, he's got elite level accuracy when he's throwing short and intermediate. He's got good zip, good velocity. So I don't think he's going to have any issue, throwing off platform. He's got good, strong mechanics that I don't think you're going to need much adjustment at the NFL level. So good rotational thrower, quick release, loves the middle of the field, natural feel for anticipating windows. The big, like I said, I like him.
There you go.
Now, Jay will join us in just a second, but Anthony,
Yes,
mid-19th.
Oh, there he is.
There we go. Okay, now that he's done, Anthony, Cincinnati hadn't had a first-round pick until tonight since 1971, but there's many good aspects of that team, including Desmond Ridder.
Yeah, Desmond Ridder. When you think about his collegiate career, his production is going up each year. It started out, he redshirted in 2017, started out 2018 with 20 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and eight American Conference Rookie of the Year. He came off the bench in the opener and started the rest of the year. And from there on, 2019, 2020, and 2021, his production's going up. Capped off at 30 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. And you look at obviously leading Cincinnati to the college football semifinals. Look at some of the strengths. Obviously, jumping production. Team captain obviously has confidence, a great command and feel for the offensive huddle. He's a mobile, agile quarterback. He's not really a dual threat running back, quarterback as much as he is a pocket passer who can run, who does have a special athleticism. Compared to maybe Alex Smith is a guy who was like that prior to his injury, that shortened his career a little bit. Pocket's poised. He has a lot of that. He can operate in a well-balanced offensive system. But there are a few things. He does have there was one thing that stood out to me in that game against Alabama. He doesn't have the ability yet to throw receivers open. In the National Football League, that is a huge thing because you think about how tightly defensive backs play receivers and being able to have to get guys open just by throwing them to a spot. And also he got that he doesn't go through all his progressions as well. And he does have a slow mechanic as far as delivering the football. He had 26 batted passes in his time in Cincinnati. So all those things are something that's going to have to clean up. He's not a guy who's going to be able to who's ready to start right away without question. I think he is somebody who has the quality to be an NFL quarterback, but he's somebody who definitely should kind of hold a clipboard and kind of watch and learn his first year and kind of get the feel, the speed of the NFL game. I think that is something he would benefit from greatly. I don't think he's someone you just throw into the fire right away and think he's gonna just suddenly light up the world. But he does have the qualities. He has the intangibles there. To be a solid quarterback, it's just not going to be right away. It just depends on where he goes. I think if he goes to a team, well, there is an incumbent. Maybe, like I said, maybe maybe he goes to Pittsburgh and gets to sit back and wait a while. Maybe he goes, elsewhere. Maybe, a team that could use a quarterback, but not right away. I think we'd be the best position for him, because if he goes to a team where they're desperate for a quarterback right now, he's going to get eaten alive, because it's just too many kinks that got to work out right now as far as him being an NFL level quarterback. So being a clipboard guy for year one, I think would be the best thing for him. But but Renner, it has the qualities to be a solid quarterback. It's just not going to be right now.
No, I mean, and that's the prevailing, opinion on guys who've watched these guys play, who've looked at the film. And for me, I don't put any stock in throwing days for any of these quarterbacks. I look at, I do the film study. I look at the throws they make, the schemes that they play in, and based on that, Ritter and Pickett may be the most NFL ready, but even to me, that means, I agree with you, Anthony, both of them, I think, have this middle level, competent NFL quarterback, written all over them. But I agree. I don't think either one of them should be starting year one. I don't think any one of these guys is a year one, and none of them are a day one starter. Forget about year one starter. So it'll be interesting to see that we haven't got, that no quarterback has been picked. And I got to give the NFL player personnel guys credit to this point. That means that none of them are actually overdrafted, because both Pickett and and Ritter and Willis had lower, late first round, early second round grades on them. So far that's holding form. Rabbi, take your SEC guy. I know you want to talk about him.
I'm not actually. I'm going to switch because we want to talk
let me have
Willis.
Willis. Come on.
Well, no, you have one already. We need to talk about Willis though really quick. You see the ability of Lamar Jackson there and what he's done, but you see it in a much smaller school. Guy who is kind of still immature at the quarterback basics, but man can be a dynamic NFL player. You're talking about a 6'2", 219 player who rushes like there's no tomorrow. That's a guy who can get you 800 to 1,000 yards on the ground, depending on what the scheme is. And the man is bouncing his steps. He is a really, really good student of the game. And I think that's going to be a huge factor. He has a great vertical touch. He's confident. And he played at a very small school and built up a reputation. He got the Liberty Flames to a top 25 ranking. He won at Virginia Tech. He could be the first guy to go in the first round since 1990 at Liberty. He has timing issues, though. He has accuracy issues. And in any other draft, he would probably be a day 2 guy. I think that's a pretty obvious statement. He still needs to locate the ball, but Anthony, we talked about it before. Someone like Malik Willis would usually be this guy should be a running back or wide receiver in the NFL. But luckily, we know now that people with that skill set can play the position in the NFL. And I think Malik Willis can definitely do that. This is a guy who I think will be a starter in the NFL. I agree, not a day 1 starter.
No,
I think he needs to learn a lot at the position, and I think that's what is going to have to happen.
And I would say this too, man. But we saw
the big thing.
Sorry, Jay, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Sorry, it's all right, Anthony. The big thing with Willis, and this is why, and I'm glad that NFL player personnel guys so far have not, reached on him. Look, he's got all the physical attributes in the world. He has the biggest cannon of the five guys who were the most talked about, potential, being batted around. But to say that he ran a rudimentary offense in college is a colossal understatement. Okay.
Well, it's Liberty. I mean, of course it's a rudimentary.
No, I'm not going to say that just because he played at the FCS level has anything to do with that. It's just that that's the system that they played in. There's very little tape of him going through multiple progressions. They did not run concepts that translate to the NFL passing game. He just simply was not asked to do anything in that regard in Liberty's offense. It's about as basic an offense as it gets. Look, granted, there isn't a throw that he can't make because he has it. He has touch. He's got trajectory control. He's had good protection on fades and wheel routes. He has a good understanding of what type of throw he needs to make. But here's the thing. Didn't run a lot of play. And it's interesting because it's Hugh Freeze. This is a guy who's notorious for running high-powered offense. Didn't call a lot of plays that targeted the intermediate middle of the field. Those are the types of films that player personnel guys want to see, to kind of get a sense of, his anticipation skills and his accuracy. He wasn't asked to do that unless it was a very specific, schemed up, one read type of throw. So that's my biggest concern with him. I think in terms of all of the guys on this list, he's the one that has the biggest learning curve coming in to the NFL. You have a lack of experience of running the type of progressions and route, and looking at route trees that you're going to see in the NFL. Guy had an issue understanding if he had to, throw the ball while hot or, couldn't figure out the blitz too well. And you got his receiver. The man had his wide receivers had a lot of drops, but that's partly because of a disconnect. Is that, Rabbi, I'm going to let you have this in a second. There's a lot of things kind of needs to develop. Yeah, there's some disconnect with him and his receivers. They made changes of running their routes and he didn't pick up on, which led to drops. So look, I hope that this guy winds up somewhere where he can understudy. And for him, he may need the Aaron Rodgers treatment, not necessarily 4 years, but it may take longer than one for him to learn how to play quarterback at the NFL level. I will say this, if he lands at Pittsburgh at 20, I will not be surprised because Mike Tomlin spent a lot of time talking to him. Tomlin likes him as a person, and character is big with the Steelers, so it'll be interesting to see. Rabbi, something's paining you. Get it out, my man.
As a Giant fan, this is definitely paining me. The Eagles have traded their number 18 pick to Tennessee, and in return, along with a bunch of other stuff that Tennessee is going to get from the Eagles, Tennessee is giving the Eagles A.J. Brown. So A.J. Brown is going to Philadelphia.
Wow.
So whoever's throwing them the ball, this guy is a very good weapon.
Well, you know what? I made the comment that a wide receiver is only as good as the quarterback that's throwing the ball to him. So we'll see what happens with the quarterback situation in Philadelphia, and if it actually improves, or is A.J. Brown just going to be spending a lot of time running routes for exercise purposes. But
Anthony, the wide receiver, the quarterback that was throwing him the balls in Tennessee was Ryan Tannehill, and we saw what he did in the playoffs. So that doesn't fly as much as you think it does. So this is a very good pick for Philadelphia. This is a very good pick up for Philadelphia.
But I would get back to the quarterback situation. We saw, I think T-Post was wising up. We saw last year outside of Mac Jones, rookie quarterback struggled mightily, getting thrown into the fire right away. Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields got beat up quite a bit. Trey Lance didn't even see the field because outside of the occasional read option play, he was basically on the sideline, and you still don't know what the heck the 49ers quarterback are going to do with their quarterback situation if Trey Lance is actually going to be a starter going into camp. So I think teams have finally just decided, you know what? We can't just keep having this whole lightning in a bottle mentality. If you get a quarterback, let's let him sit, let him naturally learn the quarterback position. I think the speed of the NFL really woke a lot of these young players up and realizing that the college level is so greatly downgraded compared to the National Football League level. You look at, you talked about Willis, and the competition he playing against is totally a complete 180 to what he's going to see on the NFL defense every Sunday. So I think the smart thing is that none of these guys are ready for day one, let alone year one. Let them sit and wait. Let them marinate. Let them get the speed of the offense. Let them read a playbook. Let them hold the clipboard. If you have a plug-in guy, you have a bridge gap, let them learn the nuances of being in the quarterback room every week and just get the feel of how things go. I think teams are really starting to kind of say, okay, not everyone's going to be a Lamar Jackson and come in and be an effective starter almost immediately. It's just not going to work. Matt Jones just happened to fall into that great situation in New England, but if he's gone elsewhere, who knows? It could be a total different story.
And you know, and you say about, you know, if he had gone elsewhere, who knows? And that also plays into something that you guys have heard me talk about before, that of all the positions in the draft, the one that success is most tied to a marriage of player skill set and the scheme and the offensive scheme of the team that he goes to. And I think NFL player personnel people are, you know, and GMs and position coaches and offensive coordinators are recognizing that you can't just take a guy from a college program, no matter what that program is, and just say, and plug him into whatever scheme you're running and say, you know, he's going to do it. It doesn't work. We saw the struggles that Fields had in his rookie year. We see we're seeing the struggles that Tua Tagovailoa is still having. We're seeing the struggles to be able to to pass at the NFL level you're expecting from Jalen Hurts. I give the Eagles credit for completely altering their offensive scheme so that it plays well to his strengths. But, you know, you have to recognize the fact that drafting a quarterback just because of the numbers he put up in college doesn't mean he's going to be able to do that in the system you play. So the fact that no one has overreached for any of these guys, I think it's a good sign. If the first quarterback of the draft goes to Pittsburgh at 20, that's kind of where it should be. None of these guys have first round grades on them. Some of them are second round.
And honestly, none of them should be picked in the first round yet.
Yeah, I would say even New Orleans. I mean, I don't think anyone feels comfortable.
New Orleans is coming up right now, so we'll see what happens.
It's a long-term answer.
Okay.
So New Orleans is another place that you can think of.
I want to get to the wide receivers really quick that we've talked about because we're going to probably circle back to these next two picks because they're interesting. Okay. So while there is almost the reddest of red flags on running backs that it's probably marooned at this point, if you watch the NFL this offseason, wide receivers are the hottest of hot commodities. As you just saw, A.J. Brown now joining Jalen Smith with the Eagles. I hate my life. Anyway, there is a dearth of pass catchers available in Las Vegas. So let's hit the slots. And Jay, don't come up snake eyes.
You know, I mean, this guy's already was a good pick when, you know, he's already been picked going to Atlanta. And, you know, as I talked about earlier, and that's, you know, Drake London out of USC, 6'3", 219. He's a first round grade, number 3 ranked receiver in the draft guide. This is a guy who I think no matter where he lands, he's going to put up numbers. The basketball background, he played basketball his first 2 years when he was at USC. You see that with his leaping skills and his high pointing instincts. The long rangy frame is what you're looking for these days in an NFL receiver. Big on contested catches and playing through contact, creates underneath cushion, able to push deep routes. This is a guy who gains proper depth and has the ability to work back to the ball. He secures catches away from his frame to keep defenders at bay. This guy was practically automatic on back shoulder throws. I mean, there was no back shoulder throw that he seemed to drop last year. college defensive backs flat out did not want to try and tackle him. And, you know, he may not have the top end speed, but he's got serious yards after catch because of that toughness and his ability to not go down. Lined up as a slot receiver when he was a freshman and sophomore, moved outside as a junior. This is a guy who is not a diva. Coaches describe him as a blue collar type of work ethic, which is kind of what you want. Yeah, can he stand to, improve the route pacing? Sure. The USC didn't have a really complicated route tree. But, I think this is a guy who's going to be aggressive after the catch. And I think once he gets rid of the sloppiness out of, the parts of his game, and if he's healthy, I mean, he lost the back end of the season with an ankle injury, but before that, his numbers were absolutely ridiculous. Offensive player of the year in the Pac-12, even though he didn't play the full season. I like I like everything about this guy's game. And I think the way he plays translates to the NFL. The thing that kind of stands out at me is that no matter what route he runs, he has figured out how to wall off defensive backs to make catches. He needs to get quicker coming out of his breaks. That's something. But I mean, you think about everything that goes on in the NFL, the receivers these days, you need a guy, especially in the red zone, who can, in that short space area. And again, this is something that comes out of his basketball game. He knows how to wall guys off. You need that in the red zone to be able to, because it's a short field. He knows how to go up and get catches, high point the ball. Catches are going to be 50-50 type contested in the red zone area. You need a guy like that. So I think no matter where, I think Atlanta is a great place for him. Arthur Smith knows how to utilize wide receivers to the best of their ability. Think about this, guys. 88 receptions, 1,084 yards receiving, tying for the team lead with 7 touchdowns. He only played 8 games. He comes back healthy and he's ready to go from day one of, at bare minimum, day one of training camp. He's in the starting lineup come opening day. I'm going to lay that out there right now. This is a great pick by Atlanta. I see big things for him going forward in the NFL. Rabbi, you're muted.
He's the number. I know, I'm not anymore. Of course he is. By the way, he's the number 1 wide receiver on that team day one. They don't have anything because Cordell Patterson's kind of a slash type guy for them. So I think it's a great pick for them. Anthony, your wide receiver has also been picked. Everyone has been picked. Go ahead.
Yeah, considering his teammate was picked literally ahead, literally just before him, I get 2 appeals since we're going to go with the Vegas route. Chris Olave is the other end of that Ohio State tantrum, and he's the quieter, speedier side of that tantrum. We talked about Garrett Wilson having the separation speed and ability to get separation. Olave is all speed. That's just pretty much what he is. 936 yards receiving, 13 touchdowns. Terry McLaurin is kind of his NFL comparison. McLaurin plays for the Washington Commandos. I'm still not getting used to that name. I mean, it's still doesn't.
No one else. That's fine. It's all good.
Yeah, but no, we got his overview. Smooth, steady, makes things happen. Fluid movement, easy from the snap to the catch, all points in between. Fast, effective, plays with the blend and foot agility to cover all 3 levels. Possesses natural, well-rounded ball skills. Also, you think about this, where he's going to the New Orleans Saints. And Michael Thomas is a question mark. He just has not been helped the last few seasons. But there's one thing James Wilson can do, and that's throw the deep ball. And now you have a deep target with a lot of his speed. So I think I obviously think he'll be a great fit in New Orleans as far as being able to be a deep threat. I think he'll be somebody who can be a game breaker. But because of the question mark surrounding Thomas's health, I think that kind of gives New Orleans a bit of an insurance as far as adding some depth in the wide receiver core if Thomas is not 100% going into the season. he's a he also, by the way, he can play special teams. He's blocked 2 punts in his career. He could be a gunner on talent special teams. So there are multiple ways you can use him as a outside of being a wide receiver. I think he would. One thing that he does, the thing that he does have to work on is being a run blocker and being able to block downfield. That's something that is going to need some work. But overall, I think it's a great selection. I think he's going to a great spot in New Orleans. Well, he'll be able to chip in as maybe the number 2 guy out of the gate. But we'll see. With Michael Thomas' injury, that kind of leaves the door open to what exactly is going to play out as far as the receiving core going into in the training camp.
There have been 6 wide receivers picked.
And 2
From
traded.
pick 8 to pick 18. And 2 traded, by the way, Jay. The other one, Hollywood
Marcus
Brown,
Brown.
is now going to Arizona for a first-round pick. Yeah, yeah, surprising. So that's why Baltimore's picking at 23. So we've had 8 wide receiver moves basically
So you
in the
tell me
last
Antonio
hour.
Brown's not-
And,
So you
and
tell
by
me
the way-
Antonio Brown has no reason to go to Baltimore anymore?
and by the way, almost every pick in the last 10 picks has been traded from Lebanon. So that's insane. Okay.
It's the middle. It's the middle of the first round. If
I know,
trades are
but
going
this is insane. It's almost like every pick has a trade with it. I'm going to mention Jameson Williams quickly. Great wide receiver. Would be a top 5 pick if he didn't have a torn ACL in the national championship game.
100%.
It says on this thing, a track spinner with CS speed. That's definitely a word that is definitely would make the most sense. He has all the capabilities of an NFL wide receiver. He had elite production as a junior. There was only 3 people in FBS last year that had 1,500 receiving yards and 15 touchdown catches. And he was a 1-year starter in Alabama. 1 year, he basically became, ironically enough, Ohio State is basically becoming the new wide receiver U. Who knew? But he has so much capability. The AC torn ACL is just such a drag, but still has a big play weapon. I think the Lions gave up a lot to get him at 12, especially for someone who I would almost consider to be a stash, because you're probably not getting him until at least the second half of 2022, which is one of the reasons why I think the Jets shied away from picking him at 10, even though I think he would have been a better pick at 10. But first team All-American, first team SEC. He has 2 kick return TDs this year too, and he has the frame of a wide receiver. He can play the slot. He can play wide receiver 2. He could play wide receiver 1. He's that good. And if you realize he'll be at the top of the fantasy football drafts over the next few years, he won't be an MVP in anything because he's going to Detroit. But I think Jameson Williams is a perfect pick for the Lions at number 12. And I think he's a perfect pick for this draft. Quickly, by the way, other names to look forward to, because this is getting ridiculous wide receiver wise. Christian Watson out of North Dakota State has a lot of Wes Welker ability. I think we've already mentioned. I don't know if we mentioned Sky Moore yet from Western Michigan.
We did. He was my pick for the Giants in the second round.
Guy grew up in Steelers territory. I don't know if he's going to make it that far at this rate. George Pickens out of Georgia. We mentioned Mechie. This is such a big wide receiver draft that it's really.
Jahan Dotson from Penn State's already been drafted. Traylon Burks.
Dotson went to the Commanders at 16. Yeah. We have had, and the Tennessee Titans literally traded a wide receiver to pick a wide receiver in Traylon Burks at number 18. Okay, very quickly, I'm going to start this segment, and Anthony will talk, and we'll get to the Steelers pick in a second. But who are your favorite pass rushers in this draft? Anthony, pick one that a lot of them still are off on the board.
Yeah, that's surprising in a draft that we thought would be
because everybody just picked a wide receiver. That's why.
Yeah, and Rabbi, this is what happens. Somebody picks a guy not where people think he's going to get picked, and it starts a run, and it looks like wide receiver.
Okay, we're gonna hold off for this Pittsburgh Steeler pick because it's exactly who you think it's going to be.
Don't spoil
yeah.
it. They haven't announced it on NFL Network
Nope,
yet.
I'm not saying it right now, but I'm going to hold off as Franco Harris is.
Because I think Franco's the one who
is
gets
about
announced,
to announce
right?
it. This is going to be a very interesting pick. I think, considering the Steelers organization is kind of in a crossroads here. I'm trying to hold this for Jay, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I didn't think we
Who
kind
should
of.
it be, in your opinion? Who should it be?
Honestly, it shouldn't be a quarterback. They have other holes that need to be filled. Granted, they basically have filled what they feel basically with the moves they made the offseason. They feel like they've filled all 11 starting positions. The one outlier was getting Edmonds back at strong safety. So there you go. Kind of called this earlier.
Well, it is a quarterback. It's Kenny Pickett of Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So, and honestly,
you mentioned Pickett before, so
yeah. And honestly, if they were going to pick one of the two, as much as I know that Tomlin likes Willis as a person and he's got potential, this is the better pick if Pittsburgh was going to draft a quarterback. And I had a feeling that the way that this draft was playing out in the first round, the Steelers were going to have their pick of quarterbacks if they wanted to go that way. Pickett falling here is a pick I do not have a problem with. I think in terms of picking a quarterback, this is the right one for the Steelers. He had a late first, early second round grade. This is late first, so to me it's not a reach. This is a team that is in need of a future starter at quarterback. Trubisky was signed 2 years, $14 million. I'm not surprised that it's Pickett. The Steelers have seen him play every day for the last 4 years. He was a 4-year starter at Pittsburgh, broke Dan Marino, all of Dan Marino's passing records, had a ridiculous senior season. And here's the thing, guys. Who was his offensive coordinator? Not last year, but the 2 years before. Who was it? That's right, Matt Canada. So he's essentially he's a not only a good he's a good fit in terms of having the skill set that will fit for that transitions well to the NFL. This is a guy who already knows the offense he's walking into. Is it possible that means he'll need less ramp-up time than any of these other quarterbacks who are going to get drafted behind him? Maybe. But it's interesting. And to me, again, player, scheme, good fit in terms of a match. So he's not going to start. He's not starting next year. They brought in Trubisky to be the QB1 for next year. Whether or not that translates to him keeping that role in the second year of his contract, who knows? But I like this pick. And I think it's going to, I hope, I can't say I think it'll work out well. I hope it'll work out well. But if, in terms of having all the guys at their disposal, this is the one I wanted them to take. I've been on I've been in favor of Pickett pretty much all year long. So I'm happy with this pick, and I think it's the right pick for the scheme that the Steelers are hoping to finally be able to run in year one post-Ben.
You know what's funny too? Like, this is the second player we've seen tonight that basically don't have to leave the state that they play collegiate football in to be in the NFL. He's actually playing in the same stadium. Believe that or not. Highest field. But you know what? I love his QB, his IQ. I just saw the big slide that he pulled off. That went for a touchdown. Look, I think this is a great pick. He's not going to play this season. Bearing an injury. Richard Trubisky is the bridge guy. But I think it's a safe pick, but it's a good pick because now you got a guy who doesn't have to go anywhere. He knows the offensive system he's walking into. He knows the stadium, the turf that he's going to be playing on down the line. Hinesfield, I mean, it has its own home field advantage. We know as far as kickers are concerned, and even in the turf itself late in the season. And also he wears gloves. I mean, he gets to. I mean, it's not nothing. He's not having to adjust a whole lot as far as collision to the NFL, being able to stay in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, has remembered the Steelers. So I think it's a great pick.
Yeah, I mean, and everybody is worried about, the ball security. And I mentioned it, 38 career fumbles, at Pitt, only 6 last year. So I think he got better every single year in this, at school. to where, the ridiculous season that he put up, 67% completions, 4,300 yards plus passing yards, ACC record 42 passing touchdowns against just 7 picks. Like I said, great marriage of player to scheme. I like that he's a hometown kid. I think, I don't see anybody who's a Steeler fan, if you have a problem with this pick, I got to wonder what your criteria were, what you were thinking in terms of if they've drafted a quarterback. I can understand people who are not happy about this pick because they thought the Steelers would potentially go defensive lineman in the first round. And think about this, Rabbi. Jermaine Johnson, a guy we talked about all week.
Still on the board.
Still on the board, yeah.
So, and he would be a guy who would also fit in the Steelers' defensive scheme. So it's interesting that they elected to go quarterback, considering they don't know what the status of Stephon Tuitt is, whether, they think he's going to be back, but you don't know until he steps into the facility. Tyson Aleo is coming off an injury. Haywood's not getting any younger. So in terms of potential down the road positional need, it's surprised that they didn't go defensive line, but quarterback was the other position of need. So in that sense, I'm not surprised that they went that route first. Quarterback.
And you didn't have to trade up to get him.
Exactly.
And you didn't have to trade up to get him. That's
exactly.
All right.
That's important.
All right, really quickly, let's go back to Anthony. We're going to talk about pass rushes really quick to close the show off. Who is your pick for your favorite pass rusher left in this draft?
Well, we talked about Logan Hall earlier today, but Jermaine Johnson being on the board is kind of is a surprise. I think a lot of people had him as the second best pass rusher, at least in the top 3 without question. Long passer, good first step quickness. He actually somebody I thought the Giants would have picked up. When one of their picks at 5 or even 7, but we saw, like I said, the Texans did really did kind of have a trickle down effect on everyday analysis as far as the first round was going to play out. But stop run defender, ability to keep blockers off his frame, 61 snaps per game in 2021, which is pretty much it's almost essential to being an every down defensive player, which a lot of teams don't have as many these days. You play a lot of snaps, a lot of formations, and a lot of variations. Guys don't really see the field literally on every snap anymore. So I thought that was a big strength for him. But George Karlaftis is another guy that
dude, you're not stealing my guy.
I'm not gonna steal him, but he is somebody to me that is kind of still on the board. I mean, look, this was a draft that was pretty deep and pretty rich in a couple of positions. We saw with the defensive backs, saw the wide receivers, obviously, but also edge rushers. I thought which is a draft where you can pretty much, if you didn't have to trade up, may have one fall into your lap. And we have just about 2 or 3 that are still on the board right now.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, and I think, Rabbi, you talked about the number of teams that traded wide receivers or traded up to get wide receivers. That run is kind of what's pushed the depth, the edge rushers that we thought would go sooner, further down in the draft. And some teams may get lucky in terms of guys that we thought would go first round may fall to the top of the second round, and that's going to be a steal. As Anthony mentioned, Karlaftis is an interesting guy, and he's the guy I'm looking at, 6'3", 266. He has a first round grade, and he was the 5th ranked edge rusher, in the list. And it's interesting to me, not so much that he's still on the board. I figure he'd be a later first round pick. But I mean, this is a guy who quick first step, relentless energy, high motor, knows what to do with his hands, got good bull rushing instincts, knows how to get his fist into the chest of a blocker and drive him backwards. Solid power. He has got a variety of power rushing techniques. He's got the stab. He's got the 2-handed swipe. He's got long arms. He bounces through contact, forces his way through blockers, rarely takes him out of plays. Head coach Jeff Brom said this is the type of guy who lives in the building trying to improve and get better, puts in the effort, each and every day beyond what most guys do. And that's kind of what you're looking for. His production improved in his 3 season college. led the team in tackle for losses and sacks in both years he was healthy. His reach, arms are shorter than ideal. Long arm blockers may be able to control him a little bit better. He had some struggle against, a guy like Dewan Jones, rather, who's the right tackle of Ohio State. So he kind of needs to get some better moves there. You would think he'd be less of an inconsistent finisher, but he needs to do that. Needs to convert more of his pressures into sacks. He did struggle against double teams. And his pass rushing instincts are better than his run defending instincts. His gap integrity is a little inconsistent against the run, and his contain responsibilities could use some improvement there. So these are all things that he's going to need to get coached up on at the NFL level. But this is a guy who spent his 3 years primarily as a stand-up rusher in the Purdue scheme. Though he did see snaps as a 3 technique interior DT to take advantage of his quickness and strength. So you can see him coming in and being part of an NFL rotation where he could start on the edge and then shift inside in sub packages. He projects as a starting defensive end in a traditional 4-man front. So we'll see how it goes. It's funny. There's an interesting line in Daniel Jeremiah's NFL.com scouting report that kind of jumped out at me. And here's it is. He has a GPS system to feel and locate the quarterback once the passer tries to escape the pocket. Which is an interesting way of saying that it's the old way of saying the guy has a nose for where he needs to go. And it seems like that even if he gets stuck early in the play, he refuses to stay blocked, finds a way to create pressure. So, I like this guy, and I think wherever he ends up, he's definitely going to be part of a rotation day one. And I think I think this guy projects, to be a legitimate, pass rusher at the NFL level. It's a question. And again, I don't know that he's necessarily going to be a 15 sack guy, but I can see him being an 8 to 12 guy that, maybe not maybe on your opposite side going against right tackles where it might be better for him. So the comp is, and Jeremiah compares him to another former Boilermaker who had a pretty decent career as a pass rusher in the NFL. Name familiar to you guys, Ryan Kerrigan. So if that's how he nets out,
that's good.
That's if that's how he nets out, he's going to have a solid career in the NFL. So I think whoever winds up with him, the further down he drops, he's going to wind up being a steal at this point wherever he goes. So whoever winds up with him, I think is going to get themselves one solid NFL pass rusher. So.
I think David Ojabo of Michigan is going to be a much more solid NFL pass rusher.
100%. And if it wasn't for his injury,
I think with less of the injury, he would definitely have already been gone off. He would have already gone off the board. He took a defensive coordinator's Mike McDonald's system from the Ravens when he brought it over to Michigan, and he worked out really, really well. He had 11 sacks last year, and this is a guy who, again, 1-year starter. So a lot of this stuff he's still learning various aspects of football. But when you said the guy has a GPS of the ball, we talk about Ojabo too. The man that makes sharp pass rush angles. He has a long lateral slide. He's fast. And again, he's smart. He is an academic All-American and is a guy who will easily learn on the field. And I think there's so much untapped potential with Ojabo that if it weren't for, ironically enough, part of my language, bullshit pro day where he suffered a torn left Achilles, he would probably, again, be a top 10 to 15 pick. There is so much great talent from Ojabo that this man has so much. He could plow through an offensive tackle. He can spin easily. Again, you don't want the inexperience. You know he's going to miss a couple of tackles or two because he plays with almost too much high in the motor. And he's not going to be a guy you're ever going to want to put on special teams. And he also, by the way, playing on the other side of Aiden Hutchinson really helped.
Yeah.
It really helped.
Yeah.
In a good and a bad way. But Jay, I think, and you've seen Michigan more than I have, obviously. I think Ajabo, once he's healthy, is going to fit into many different schemes and whatever.
Yeah,
team ends up picking.
here's the thing. I mean, he was a stand-up edge rusher in McDonald's scheme, and he kind of projects as as a hybrid linebacker. Think of to use a phrase that the 49ers used to use way back in the day, and it was used for Charles Haley, who was one of the best pass rushers in NFL history. It's called the elephant position. So sometimes you were a stand-up, sometimes you were a hand down, and it all depends. And like you said, Rabbi, he put up 11 sacks while only starting half the games that Michigan played last year. He is still learning how to play football. He has what he did last year was on so much raw talent more than anything else because he doesn't have enough time playing the game. The key thing for him is how much time will it take him to recover from the Achilles injury, and where is his level of speed afterwards? You saw what has happened to Devin Bush for the Steelers again, who again was a linebacker who was predicated on speed, had an injury, has seemed to have sapped him of his speed, and you wonder how much of that is physical and how much of it is mental. That's the thing, is that Ajabo was able to do a lot of things because he is naturally explosive. And with the upfield burst, he has the stride length to overwhelm tackles. The question is, can he recapture that speed? So, and I'll tell you this, once he actually improves his technique in terms of things, I mean, the guy's ceiling is through the roof. We're not going to know until he comes back recovers from the Achilles. But I got to tell you, based on what I saw before that happened, you're right, Rabbi. If he does not get hurt, he's top 15. I mean, this is a guy who, I mean, granted, did he benefit from having, playing on the opposite side from Hutchinson and not necessarily, going against the lesser, tackle in terms of pass protection? Maybe, but he still
Doesn't matter.
Man caused havoc. That man caused straight out havoc.
It doesn't matter. Do you think
he can do it in the NFL?
Doesn't matter. You don't think he's going to he's going to face the best competition all the time? Almost only the elite players is going to get your best blocker every single time. So,
I liked him, and it'll be interesting. I really hope that he recovers fully, and we're able to see him take the next step in his career as a football player.
Guys, before we get out of here, I know there's still 9 picks left to go, but I think we've pretty much called it a night here. I'm going to mention my takeaway from this draft. And
Rabbi, I think we still have one little segment left, and that's the top 15 review.
That's exactly what we're talking about. Not just top 15 review. I want to talk about everything that we've seen so far because I want to kind of wrap everything up. So here's what I'm thinking with this draft. I think it was going to be a wide receiver draft coming in, and it sure hasn't disappointed to being a wide receiver draft. Again, we had a run of 7 wide receivers between 8 and 18. I'm sorry, 6 wide receivers between 8 and 18, plus a guy, two wide receivers traded. And one of them getting, by the way, A.J. Brown got a 4-year, $100 million deal to go with that trade to the Eagles.
Wow.
Mama, just raise everybody to be a pass catcher. Because what we used to, when we used to actually overvalue quarterbacks and overvalue running backs, it turned out we were overvaluing pass catchers because this was a day for wide receivers. This has been an off season for wide receivers. This has just been, that's what I'm going to take away from it. Basically, the fact that we had 6 wide receivers go top 18 and 2 big names going to other teams to be, in the case of probably both A.J. Brown, who again is going to be opposite Jalen Smith next year in Philadelphia, and obviously you have DeAndre Hopkins in Arizona and Hollywood Brown. Wide receivers are going to get paid, gentlemen.
Yet, Rabbi, the thing that stands out for me in terms of a pick that I really like, and again, I've said it once, I've said it before, and I'm going to say it right here again. player fitting to scheme. As much as I'm sure he's going to cause me agita twice a year for the next 10 years or so, I really like Kyle Hamilton going to Baltimore. This is a great pick for them. He's the best safety in the draft. And I know people don't consider it a premium position, but this is a kind of guy who's going to be a Swiss Army knife in that secondary. He's got elite range from depth thanks to his long strides. He's really good at chasing down plays. He's got a ridiculously high football IQ. He anticipates well. He quickly reads top down, sorts through route combinations. Really good as a tackler. Has gotten better each season. 3-level blitzer with tactical attack angles. He's a great hitter the type of guy who's going to dislodge the ball on contact. He has that, what they call my ball mentality. Doesn't let interception opportunities go to waste. He actually averaged 10 yards per return with one pick six. So he knows how to, he's a guy you can put in the center field and kind of he can do it all. He's not just a guy who can come up and play in the box. He's not just a guy who can play center field, a la Minkah Fitzpatrick. This is a great fit for this scheme in Baltimore. 6'4", so rare height. Guy can cover. He's able to drop down into the slot. He played the field safety, which is kind of center field in Notre Dame's scheme. Earned All-American status each of his 3 years there. Led the team in interceptions twice. I love this pick. I'm a big fan of safeties in general, granted, because I've had a bird's eye view of them in Pittsburgh from the likes of, Donnie Shell all the way, up to Troy Polamalu and now Fitzpatrick. So I know how a versatile playmaking safety can cause havoc for a team where defense is a focus. So I don't see a lot of negatives for this guy. I think he's going to wind up being a Pro Bowl center fielder in the NFL. And like I said, it's a great pick for them. I think he's going to do great things for them. Kind of reminds you a little bit maybe of Ed Reed. Could be the second coming. Yeah. So, and like I said, it's great for Baltimore. I just know that he's gonna have me going like this for the next 10 years when playing Pittsburgh twice a year.
And Anthony, what's your takeaway from this night so far?
Two things. Number one, I think the local teams had a really good night and a really good round one. I think the Jets got the guys. Actually, like I said, I'm gonna brag about being 2 for 2 with the Jets picks. That's obvious.
You can brag, man. You called them.
Yeah, but
especially the night after your Stanley Cup picks both failed to make the playoffs. You should get something.
I needed some redemption, okay? Both my Stanley Cup picks are missing the playoffs this year, so that's
very rare to see in predictions. So
yeah, but the thing is, the local teams, the Jets, they get a foundation, a building block, and with the sauce. By the way, I'm gonna call him that from now on. But I think
everyone's gonna call him that from now on, and I'm perfectly okay with that.
Well, trust me. Well, if he fits into Robert Saleh's defensive schemes as well as I think he's going to be, that's all he's going to be called. Literally, the moment he walks down Midtown Manhattan, just on a random Saturday afternoon. But also, a pick that I liked, the top 15 was Jordan Davis going to the Eagles. This dude is a 6'6", 300-pound mountain of a man who you can't even move and try to run against. Think about this. He's going to be lined up with Fletcher Cox. That in itself,
possibly the most talented player in college football.
Back on a 1-year deal, but even if that's the case, this guy is a mountain of a man who can stuff the run and collapse a pocket in a heartbeat. And I'm thinking, like, this Eagles defense is already good against to run. It's going to be even better. I think, like I said, if Jalen Hurts can make that leap from last year to the next level as far as being an NFL quarterback, and with the weapons he's going to have, now when you're doing A.J. Brown, tonight could be a really big night for the Philadelphia Eagles. I hate to say that as a Giant fan, but when you think I mean, obviously the all blue gives it away, but when you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, and this is a team that they weren't a bad team. They made the playoffs for a reason. I mean, they want to get in. They tell the offense and changed it around Jalen Hurts' strengths. Hopefully, he can build on that. In, obviously in year 3, having more experience and being more of a full-time starter. But now you look at the weapons he's gonna have. He has the strong defense. He's just got Davis added to that equation. It could be like I said, the local teams had a good night, but the Philadelphia Eagles could be in for a great night as well, depending on if Jalen Hurts make that leap, and whatever they do, it could be a good weekend for the team down I-95 South.
Yeah, it's been interesting, and it's most of the guys who are in the top 20 of the top 100 are kind of off the board already. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but to me, I think the biggest name that I'm surprised is still
Johnson.
Is Jermaine Johnson. I mean, it's very, very surprising that that he's still on the board. What's going to be interesting for me, Baltimore's up next, and Baltimore, as we know, is a team that's big on pass rushes. So I'm interested to see if he actually winds up falling here. It's been a very interesting night, guys. I don't know that I expected to see this many wide receivers not only get drafted in the first round, but and didn't expect to see this many get traded. And that's the big shock.
Have you watched the NFL in 2022? I always expect wide receivers to get traded.
It's very surprising, and what'll be interesting to see is the teams that these teams that traded these big name wide receivers. In one case already, we've seen they traded a big name, and then when their next pick up, they kind of filled that spot by drafting somebody who was in the top 10 of the wide receivers on the board.
And cheaper.
Yeah, exactly. And you got to wonder. And that's the other thing that intrigues me is if part of the reason why it's being done is that you've got NFL GMs who saw the ridiculous contracts being handed out to receivers, and in some cases, teams overpaying for guys and giving away, all that money and all that draft capital. You have to wonder if some of these GMs are going, well, you know what? This guy is coming up on near the end of his contract, he's going to ask for an outrageous sum. I'm going to deal him now when I can and come, fill his slot with somebody, like you said, who's going to be on a rookie contract for the next 3 years.
To be fair, AJ was in the same situation as Debo was. AJ was going to walk out, but Debo's been a lot more vocal about it, and Debo has a lot more of the sexiness in what he did last year. Okay. Guys, I'm done. I think
Are you really?
Yeah.
You know what?
I am.
You know what? This is the third year. Obviously, we've done this in this format, and obviously a shout out to Joe Tufaro as always. But this is fun. This is why doing this the way we've done the last few years has been so fun, because this is what we think we know. We feel what the draft is going to go like.
Mm-hmm.
The exact opposite happens, and we just saw from the third pick with the Texans, it's just like. The rest of round 1 just had a total 180 as far as what we thought we was gonna see going into tonight. As far as how it played out. So that's why. This is why
in some ways, it was. I was a little surprised at the inactivity in the top 10. A little surprised at that.
A little surprised, but I mean, what's interesting, and Anthony, you hit it, and I've been saying this all week long, is that that Texans pick at 3 was going to determine if the draft went this way or it went this way. And I honestly think that if they had gone edge rusher or even, offensive lineman, I think we would have seen the rest of that at least the rest of that top 10 play out differently. I mean, I agree with you, Anthony. I think it worked out just fine.
Yeah,
for the Giants. The Giants
got
they have. It definitely, they had more to work with than we thought they would. So, I don't have an issue with it. From here, everybody, you can look on paper, drafts always look good. But as Joe said earlier in the draft, and he and I are in agreement on this, you can't really gauge the draft until, about 4 years from now, because it's a question of, you know, because think about it, the fourth year is kind of when you're deciding whether or not you're going to give that rookie a second contract, you know? So you're kind of gauging, that's where you're going to know that is this a guy who's going to stick around and be a cornerstone of my franchise for the next 10 years, or like, oh crap, we blew this pick and we're going to have to start all over again from this at this particular position. So, as always, you know, a draft is not made on the picks you make in the first round. You do have to try and get, you're looking for home runs, especially if you're drafting in the top 10. What you're looking for is someone you feel is going to be a starter, if not by day one, but definitely by end of year one. That is what you're looking for when you're in the top 10. I think the Jets and Giants both secured that. What'll be interesting to see, but where a GM makes his money, guys, is starting tomorrow. Starting tomorrow, where you have the day 2 picks, rounds 2 and rounds 3, which is where you're going to get guys who are going to fill in the depth and be spot starters, who are going to be in your rotations at positions like defensive line, like defensive back, like wide receiver. So it's a question. This is where Shane in his first year and Douglas, who with Woody Johnson back, Douglas is, I think, a little more on the hot seat than maybe he would have been under Chris Johnson, because Chris is a lot more patient. Woody's a lot more volatile. So I think in terms of the two of them, Douglas has to really hit on those second and third round picks, because those are guys who are going to be parts of your rotation going forward. Shane, of course, you know, the guy's in the honeymoon phase. So, but he still, you wanted to have a solid draft. And like I said, tomorrow is where those guys are going to really make their money. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. But yeah, Anthony, I agree with you. Being able to do it this way the last 3 years now, having Joe on and being able to really, you know, really dig into the draft. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, man. It definitely has.
All right. With all thanks to Joe Tufaro, who joined us earlier, at Tough Dan on almost all platforms, and Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait. I'm Stephen Rabinowitz. Join us next Thursday for more live action at facebook.com/onthesportslines. Watch all our previous things at youtube.com/onthesportslines. And Jay, you've talked enough tonight at ONTH Sportslines on Twitter for many different nuggets about the world of sports.
And I added one this morning, a really great article by our buddy Jason Stark, about the potential for some iconic numbers in Major League Baseball kind of vanishing at the rate we're going. You know, but we may never see another 3,000 hit guy, another 500 home run guy, or another 300 win guy. It is definitely an article. If you're that type of baseball guy, you should check it out.
Can't believe Miguel Cabrera's at 3,000. All right. We'll see you next Thursday on the Sports Line. Good night.
Good night, everybody.